Maverick News presents The Rick Walker Show. Defrag your mind.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Rick Walker. Welcome back to the Maverick News channel. Welcome, Maverick family and new viewers from all over the world. Great to have everybody here on this very weird Saturday. And when I say weird, you'll understand what I mean when some of the clips that we have lined up for you tonight, some of them will no doubt make you smile and laugh, scratch your head, and wonder what the heck is going on out there. What are we going to talk about? Well, just to give you a taste of things to come, we'll just touch on the Russian forces taking Bakhmut. We'll check in with the mayoral race in Toronto, specifically with what Chris Sky is doing. He's getting plenty of attention on social media. Over 70 different candidates running in Toronto for the mayor's position, the largest city in Canada. And Chris Sky kind of being ignored by the mainstream media, but getting plenty of attention on social media. We'll just show you what that's all about. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau over at the G7 conference in Hiroshima, meeting with other world leaders and kind of getting a cold reception from the Premier of Italy. I'll explain why. Also, we'll check in with Joe Biden, who is also at the G7, and we'll find out what he had to say in his address, his initial address to other world leaders. The G7, of course, is a conference for the leaders of the leading Western G7 countries, the economic leaders. And we have a lot to talk about tonight. So I'm going to go to a brief promo here to give myself a moment just to bring up the right video clips that we're about to run first off tonight, and I will be right back after this.
Greetings, brave Mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals, defenders of individual rights and freedoms, credible, trusted, grounded in reality. Maverick News, Maverick News. Defending free speech, free speech. Donate at freedomreporters.com. Do it now. Tomorrow may be too late. Maverick News. The world is watching. Fighting the Great Reset by leading the Great Resistance. Maverick News. The antivirus programs for your mind.
Yesterday, I said that it appeared Russia has now secured Bakhmut. That has been a bloody battle. It's been dragging on. We saw controversy in Russia as leader of the Wagner mercenary group, accused some people within the Russian hierarchy of failing to live up to obligations and promises to provide enough ammunition and resources for the Wagner forces to take that territory. It was unprecedented, actually, what happened. But now it appears everything has worked out in favor of the Russian forces, and it's the Wagner mercenary group that has led the charge, has secured the area. After threatening to withdraw, they have now advanced. And this is what it looks like there on this 20th day of May, 2023. Let me get you some audio on this.
20.05.20 мая 23 года. 20.05.2023. Сегодня по полудню в 12 часов полностью был взят Бахмут. Последний 20.
So I think that video speaks for itself. This could be a watershed moment in the war. The forces that Russia brought to bear were overwhelming, as I understand it. They crushed the Ukrainian defenses, and now the Russian military is firmly in control of that territory. On to the G7 we go now, and that is where tonight, let's start with this guy. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. Look at this. This is the premier of Italy. Look at the eyes. Look at the way she's staring at him. She's conservative. Mainstream media says far right. But she's not happy because JT decided to give her a little bit of a lecture on LGBTQS plus rights, or his concerns about the way she views LGBTQ communities in her own country. Well, that didn't sit well with her. Let's go to the full clip, shall we? Here's the greeting, and here's the exchange between those two world leaders. A little bit of tension. Here it comes.
Well, after the buongiorno a tutti, sono molto contento di I'm happy to meet again Justin Trudeau, and I think there are many things that we can do to strengthen our cooperation. Italy and Canada are strong ties, also for a big Italian community standing there and cooperating. There are, I think, 3 ministers that are tied to Italy in the government, prime minister, and we're very proud of that. And I think that Canada in this moment is a very strategic country in the current international situation. So we want to strengthen this cooperation. We've been talking already during the G20, and it's a great occasion to discuss again. Yes. Thank you. It's good to see you, Georgia. It's an opportunity for us to come together as a G7 to talk about the challenges that the world is facing right now and make sure we're standing
strongly on our values and promoting the kind of economic growth that leads to prosperity, not just for us, but for the global south as well. We know that's going to be a big part of the conversations that we need to have. We know that it's a time of tremendous anxiety for our citizens, whether it's the war in Ukraine, whether it's hangovers from the pandemic, whether it's the global economic challenges people are facing. People need reassurance. People need to be included. Obviously, Canada is concerned about some of the positionings that Italy is taking in terms of the LGBT rights. But I look forward to talking with you about that because we're here at the G7 as an assembly of countries that are promoting the kinds of strong values and democratic principles that the world needs. And I always look forward to those conversations with you. C'est toujours un grand plaisir de m'asseoir avec des collègues du G7.
I don't think she's too happy.
On parler de croissance économique, de valeurs partagées et de défis que nous avons pour créer de la croissance économique partout dans le monde.
It's fair to say that the most common walk.
Oh, got to pull out of that. Huh. Well, what's the right word for that? Arrogant? Maybe a little. I don't know. It's politics. Yeah. I'll be right back.
Maverick News. The world is watching.
So you may be watching from the United States or other parts of the world, but here where I live, one of the big stories right now is the mayor's race in Toronto. It's just the mayor's race. There are no other council positions up for grabs right now because the mayor that was elected, John Tory, resigned because of a scandal involving a female staff member. Say no more. So as a result, we now have over 70 people running in that election, which is, I mean, that's a crazy number of people. But recent polling shows that Olivia Chow remains the front runner in the mayor's race in Toronto. And a Main Street Research survey just released says that Chow has about 30% support based on the polling that they've done. Behind her is, and Olivia Chow, by the way, is was married to Jack Layton, who was the leader of the New Democratic Party of Canada at one time. He's passed away. And so she is, you know, basically your typical progressive, left-wing, woke neoliberal. Not surprising, really, that she would therefore be a front runner, and in this case, the front runner in the Toronto mayor's race, especially given the demographics in Toronto. Following up in second place is Anna Baleo, with about 21%, and she's gaining ground, gaining about 6 percentage points up over the past week. In third place, we have, well, it's kind of a several people kind of pulling up into the third place position. We have Mark Saunders. I believe he's a former police chief. Mitzi Hunter. I don't really know a lot about Mitzi Hunter. And they're all sitting in around 12, 14%, somewhere in that range. But one of the candidates that continues to generate a lot of online social media attention, but is being largely ignored by the mainstream media, is Chris Sokocia, or Chris Sky, as he's more commonly known. He's not being listed in really any of these polls. He's not being mentioned in mainstream media reports for the most part. Really kind of, they're going out of their way really to ignore him. I think that is because he is a prominent figure within the freedom movement. And so for a lot of different reasons, the mainstream media chooses to just ignore him, that being one of the main reasons. Kareem Assad is a Toronto lawyer who spends much of her time following freedom protesters, demonstrators around, going to different freedom events. I'm not sure why. I'm not really even sure that she is where she stands politically. She calls herself a political satirist, and I've come to really actually like a lot of her videos. And she's on Twitter, very active there, posting videos on Twitter on a regular basis. I would really strongly encourage you to go check out her work. She was active again today and went to, where else? A Chris Sky rally. And of course, there were a lot of freedom protesters around. And here's Chris Sky today in Toronto speaking to his supporters about experience. Here's the clip.
The far radical left, communist NDP, she just got 2 separate connections to communist China. We all heard about the secret Chinese police stations operating in our city. Well, she met with the people operating those. Direct connections. Then, everyone talks about experience. Experience. Oh, she's got 40 years in politics. What does that mean? That means she's got 40 years of learning how to live off every single one of you without doing anything for the city. What was her background? What was her experience? Only job she ever had in her life was a sculptor. A sculptor. That's fantastic if I want to make an imprint of Ed's dog. But I don't know how well that's going to be if I want to run a city. What have I done? For the last 20 plus years, I've been in residential planning, development, design, and build, which means that I had to work in a private sector and actually be successful, which means I actually had to learn how to manage people, money, and resources. All the while, I had to work with the zoning, development, and building departments of the city. I had to work with every single department. I had to cut through every piece of red tape, and I had to do it on my timeline and my budgetary constraints. So I'm the only person running for mayor that has actual, tangible, relevant experience to do my job and to do it properly.
So taking some shots there at the front runner, Olivia Chow, trying to make up some ground. And yeah, you know, he's got a lot of ground to make up, a big gap to close there, because the election is now just over a month away. June 26th is election day, and I'm not even sure where he sits in these polls, but he's not ranking up there in the top even the top 5 based on the polling. Now, those numbers could be cooked a bit, but that's a lot of ground to cover over the next month. But politics, anything can happen. So we'll see how things go for Chris Sky over the next few weeks. Here's another clip of Chris Sky. This is something he produced himself. And the issue that he's focusing on here is specifically 15-minute cities, which he has been talking about a lot during his campaign. Here we go.
All right, everybody, what is a 15-minute city and why am I the only one talking about this? Well, we are at Front Street in Toronto, and this is a notice for a city zoning change. And what do they want to use? They want to do a mixed-use building with residential, office, and retail spaces. They have 560 residences and only 459 parking for cars. There's not even enough parking for the people that are supposed to live in the building, let alone for the surrounding infrastructure and the supposed commercial and retail. These buildings are designed so you live up here, you work down here, you go to the gym here, you go to the grocery store here, you go to Starbucks here, you meet your friends here, and then you go back home here. In other words, you don't leave your building. That's what a 15-minute city design is. That's why they're already designing buildings. And this one's a high-rise compared to most of them. Most of them are going to have even less amount of car parking for residences. And you notice, what do they do have? Extra bike parking. Because why? They don't want you in a car. They want you in a bike. This is what they're trying to do to Toronto, and I am the only one that's not only talking about it, I'm the only one that's going to stop it. If you want to drive a car, if you want to be able to go from point A to point B, if you don't want them to track your grocery purchases like the mayor of New York just announced, or limit the amount of meat you can consume in public institutions like they just announced, well, there's only one solution. Chris Sakocha for mayor. Stop the 15-minute cities.
The real question is, will these issues that Chris Sky, that he's focusing on, will they resonate with the voters of Toronto? Are enough people in Toronto, just the residents in general, not just people within the freedom movement, but the general population, are they concerned enough about these issues that he is focusing on to throw their support behind him? Are they even aware, or do they know what a 15-minute city is, let alone be upset about it enough to vote for him to prevent it from happening in the way that he is laying it out? I'm not so sure. That might be the reason he's the only candidate talking about it, because the other candidates are focusing on other issues that the general population is maybe more aware of. I'm not sure if talking about those issues, I mean, that might play well to the freedom movement. I don't know if it plays well to the general population. You have to kind of, as I've said many times in the past, when it comes to politics, you need to win the election, not just get out there to try to win an argument. It's kind of two different things. So we will see how it goes. Not really criticizing, just it's an observation, a question, and I guess we'll find out what the answer is to what I just laid out there on Election Day on June 26th. But there's still time to kind of change things up, and who knows what's going to happen in the race, and maybe we can get Chris Sky back on the show again for a second interview between now and Election Day. I think that would be a good thing too, so that we can hash out some of these issues. Like when we did the interview here, I did not focus on those kinds of issues. I asked him questions that were very specific to the city, that were actual municipal issues. And I have to say, he was very well versed. He had them all nailed down. He knew what he was talking about. He had an answer for all of the different issues and was able to clearly state his position. So he's got the issues down. Will he resonate with the voters? That's the question. We will have to find out, I guess. He's got an uphill battle. I said in the beginning that I thought, he has a chance to win because he's charismatic. He has a big social media following, a big social media presence. He has a lot of things going for him, had a lot of things going for him from the very beginning. He has name recognition. He has a base of support, organization. He has all of those things. I think he even has, some funding. He has money behind him so he can get this thing done. But he's not being invited to the debates. He's not being covered by the mainstream media. So in municipal politics, exposure is, well, at any level of politics, really name recognition, exposure. Those are the two main things. Like, that's half the battle. But if they ignore you, if they're not going to even acknowledge you, then you've got a real challenge on your hands. I mean, can you name all 76 candidates? Can anyone name all 76? I can't. So if you become an also-ran in a field of 76, then you're doomed. He isn't there because he does have an online presence to counterweight what the mainstream media is trying to do by ignoring him. But is it enough? Don't know. He's going to have to expand, broaden his appeal and his base of support to take in a broader demographic than just showing up on any given day and having the same freedom movement people sort of around him as we've seen there. It's just not enough. It just isn't enough. So, yeah, that's where things stand right now with Chris Sky and the Toronto mayor's race. And we'll try to maybe get some of the other candidates on the show, or at least start to provide some coverage of some of those other candidates as well, to provide some balance here on the program too, so that we don't just come off as being, a one candidate program. That's certainly not the case here. We do want to provide balance. Don't go away. Be right back.
The New World Order. Government overreach. The Great Reset. Mainstream media lies. Now more than ever, independent voices are needed. Donate now at freedomreporters.com. That's freedomreporters.com. Maverick News. The antivirus program for your mind.
Maverick News. The world is watching.
Okay, so back to the G7. G7 has urged China to press Russia to end the war in Ukraine and respect Taiwan's status, as they're putting it, and focused on what they're calling fair trade rules. This, of course, is the group of 7 of the wealthiest democracies in the West. So they issued a joint statement today emphasizing that they did not want to harm China, and they're seeking constructive and stable relations with Beijing, recognizing the importance of engaging candidly with and expressing their concerns directly to China. And that's a quote. Further into the statement, they say, we call on China to press Russia to stop its military aggression and immediately, completely, and unconditionally withdraw its troops from Ukraine. We encourage China to support a comprehensive, just, and lasting peace based on territorial integrity and the principles and purposes of the UN Charter, including in direct talks with Ukraine. So cooperation with China is needed given its global role and economic size, according to the G7, in appealing for working together on challenges such as climate change, biodiversity, debts, and financing needs of vulnerable countries, global health concerns, and economic stability. The leaders went on in their statement to express, quote, serious concern about the situation in the East and South China Seas, where China has been broadening its presence militarily and threatening to use force to exert its control over self-governed Taiwan. At least that's sort of the way they're portraying it in their statement. The G7 is calling for what they're calling a peaceful resolution of China's claim to Taiwan, which has remained unresolved since China gained power on the Chinese mainland in 1949. So the G7 insists that there is no legal basis for China's expansive maritime claims in the South China Sea. And further, the G7 is opposing China's militarization activities in the region, as they put it. A growing China that plays by international rules would be of global interest, it says in the statement. It alludes to charges that Beijing is undermining, and again, here's this phrase, the all-important phrase. It reveals the attitude, the ideology, undermining the, quote, rules-based international order. If you don't know what that means, it really refers to NATO, the West, dictating international law by drawing up a set of rules collectively and then insisting or demanding that other nations like Russia and China, other sovereign states who are not under the umbrella of NATO or their little club, insisting that they fall into line and follow the rules that they make up. Essentially, it forms the basis of what we might refer to here as a one world government. All sovereign nations will find that their democracies, their sovereignty is superseded by the rules-based international order. The G7 is also united in voicing concerns today about human rights in China, including in Tibet, in Hong Kong, and in the far western region of Xinjiang, where the issue of forced labor is a perennial issue. So Biden made his initial address to the G7, and we have that queued up for you now. Here we go. Joe Biden.
I'd like to invite President Biden for his statement.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Prime Minister. Nearly 1 year ago, we made a commitment to commit not only to build a better infrastructure, but to build a better future. One rooted in opportunity, security, and prosperity for all. And thanks to all the public and private partners around this table, many more around the world, we've already begun to deliver. Together, we've initiated quality and sustainable infrastructure projects across Africa, Asia, and the Americas. And we're strengthening our shared climate security, health security, and food security, and economic security. All four are critical. We started to engage more private investors to better de-risk and leverage additional capital. And I see at least two from the United States here that are de-risking a lot. And I'm proud to announce that the United States has already mobilized more than $30 billion in investments to date and we're just getting started. Together, we have a lot of work to do to close the infrastructure gap and in low and middle income countries. And as we begin the next year, our partnership, we need to find new ways to maximize our investments. That's why moving forward, the United States will enhance our focus on investing in key economic corridors. In practice, that means making game-changing investments in regions that could lead to positive impacts across multiple sectors in multiple countries. We've already started working with our partners to make this happen. For example, in sub-Saharan Africa, the U.S. Development Finance Corporation is looking to invest in its first railway project on the continent. A rail line would extend from the western shores of Angola to the border of the DRC and Zambia, with the goal of ultimately reaching Indian Ocean, connecting the continent east to west for the first time. This project will not only quickly promote trade and create jobs, over time, in my view, it will strengthen supply chains, incentivize investments in agriculture, and promote food security. And it's going to enable, in my view, us to better access clean energy and digital connectivity across the entire region, creating more security, more prosperity, more opportunities for generations to come. That's what our focus on the key economic corridors is all about, investing in near-term solutions that pay long-term dividends. It's not only in Africa. We're starting similar work in Costa Rica, Ecuador, Indonesia, and other places I won't bore you with now. Let me close with this. During the G7 meeting, we're addressing a range of issues: climate change, food security, gender inequality, economic resilience, digital connectivity, and global security. We're tracking these challenges together, and I think we're beginning to make some important progress. But if we don't move to do more to strengthen infrastructure in low and middle income countries, if we don't do more to help nations deliver opportunities and prosperity for their people, our impact is going to be limited. That's how critical this partnership is. That's how important our investments are. So today, as we begin the PGII's second year, let's all find ways to maximize our investment. Maximize it, because it will do a lot, not only for that particular undertaking, but it has an impact across the entire regions, in my view. And to unlock even more public and private capital. And together, let's recommit to showing that democracies can deliver. Let me say it again. Democracies can deliver. We have to deliver to people around the world. I want to thank you all for your partnership and leadership in this vital issue. And now I'm going to turn it back to the Prime Minister. Thank you.
We'll stick with this because Ursula is going to speak now.
Next, I'd like to invite Dr. von der Leyen for her remarks.
Much a pleasure to see you here. Indeed, it has been described, PGII, an initiative of $600 billion, top quality infrastructure, where Europe is proud to contribute half of it. We want eyes-level partnership with the partner countries. We want to find solutions to the real challenges low and middle-income countries are facing today. And we want to be part of the investments in infrastructure projects that bring good jobs and lasting growth, and very important, they create value locally. Now, to reach this goal, we need the private sector. So this could take us from the billions to the trillions. We need you, and that's why we're here today. I know that you want to know that we are in this for the long haul. Yes, this is for sure, we are in this for the long haul. And we want to work with our partner countries in a way that we have full transparency, strengthen the regulatory environment, and develop skills. I know that such a conducive and regulatory clear environment is essential for you to have the necessary predictability and security for capital investment. Global Gateway, the European part of this initiative, has started 90 projects worldwide so far. Let me share just 3 examples. In Namibia, we are providing guarantees for private investments in green hydrogen. The goal here is twofold: ensure clean energy for the country itself and generate new revenues for the country in a way that it is able to export the green hydrogen, for example, to the European Union. In Rwanda, we are working with a vaccine producer to bring the mRNA technology to Rwanda, so that in this country, together with you, the private sector, the country is able to produce the life-saving vaccines for the region. In the Philippines, we are connecting our Copernicus satellite to build the first Earth observation system in Southeast Asia. And Nokia, who is with us today here, is investing in 4G and 5G infrastructure. So here, the cooperation will support national and regional capacities to tackle the impact of climate change and improve disaster risk management. So these were a few brief examples for the incredible power that public-private partnership can unleash. And I'm glad to announce that we are now mobilizing an extra 4 billion euros in loans for the Asian and Pacific regions. Ladies and gentlemen, the G7 partnership is our effort to be part of the solution to the infrastructure investment gap. We want to put a better offer on the table. If we are in a race, we are in a race to the top, and we will continue to work after Hiroshima with the next presidencies of G7 in Italy and in 2025 in Canada. So happy to have you on board, and I want to invite you already to the first Global Gateway Forum in Brussels in October this year. Thank you for joining us.
Wow.
Thank you, Ursula.
Wow.
So in addition to the leaders present here today, we have 4 people from the private sectors of the co-organizing countries and also from the World Bank. First of all, from Japan, I'd like to invite the chairman of Japan Foreign Trade Council, Mr. Fumiya Kokubu, on behalf of trading companies that promote infrastructure projects.
Honored to be here at this side event tonight. The Japan Foreign Trade Council is an industry organization representing various types of the trade-related entities, one of which are so-called Sogo Shosha, or diversified trading conglomerate. We are a group of unique firms involved in a broad range of businesses worldwide, from upstream to downstream, in the supply chains of many different industries. In infrastructure development, the Sogo Shosha organized project in their entirety. Not only do we act as investors, we are also involved in initial project planning, the structuring the overall financing, and overseeing the construction as well as the operation and maintenance management. We have a long and proven track record, not only in renewable energy, but also public transportation, which helps lower carbon emissions, and desalination projects to tackle water shortages, and so many others. We believe the key to the success of the infrastructure project is the good coordination and collaboration among the wide range of stakeholders, from MDBs, the private investors, the government regulators, to local communities. The way the Sogo Shosha work through communication to benefit all the stakeholders fits well with PGII's philosophy of promoting quality infrastructure investment through public-private partnership. We are now at the critical juncture in human history, highlighted by the importance of upholding the principle of a free and open international order based upon rule of law. So we welcome PGII as an initiative that can help to protect and enhance this principle. And we expect that the governments and other stakeholders around the table will work together hand in hand to further improve the investment environment and promote public-private partnership. Thank you very much.
Public-private partnerships. Okay. Rules-based international order, public-private partnerships. They keep using those phrases. Those are key to everything. You understand those things, you understand where everything's going, what they're doing with the economy, what they're doing with international agreements that will circumvent national sovereignty, the way that sovereign nations are governed. And when I say that, I mean it. Under this rules-based international order, countries become subservient to the collective, to the one world government, to the new world order. That's what they're talking about there at the G7 today. Those two phrases, rules-based international order and public-private partnerships. What is a public-private partnership? That's what we're seeing right now as they try to drive toward an electrified automotive industry and an electrified future. It is the government handing over billions of dollars to big corporations in order to get them to do what they want, to build electric cars, to shift from internal combustion engines to electric vehicles. They're doing it with our tax dollars. And then because these big corporations accept all of this money, they find themselves in a partnership. It's economic fascism. It's the same basic approach that Nazi Germany took to rejuvenating the economy prior to World War II. That's what Hitler did. He engaged in corporatism, public-private partnerships. That's the economic fascist approach. It is the very definition, really, of fascism, where you have the government here and corporations over here, and they work together. That's why we have so much trouble with our social media right now and censorship. It's because the corporations that control the big social media companies are in bed with government. So government essentially is able to control the corporations that run the social media platforms. And in turn, the corporations also have a hand in what the government does. They're a partner. They're not arm's length. You know, the government itself is not, in the United States, allowed to engage in the kind of censorship that we are witnessing right now and experiencing, living through, dealing with. The government can't do that, but a private corporation can. So YouTube, because they're a private company, can establish its own rules. If they don't like what you're saying, they can suppress you. They can ban your channel. The government can't do that. Constitutionally, they're not allowed. But the private company can. And yet, we're seeing that through regulation, through grants, subsidies, and so on, the two are coexisting. They've become partners. They even describe it as such, a public-private partnership. That's why we're having so much trouble. You know, Henry Ford didn't build the Ford empire with a bunch of government money. The auto industry came up. If you go back to the early 1900s, there were literally hundreds of different car companies. Many of them, excuse me, went bankrupt, didn't survive, because it was investors, entrepreneurs, inventors who saw opportunity to build a product for the population. In fact, when Benz created the very first internal combustion engine driven vehicle, he refused to, they refused to sell those to the public because they said that they weren't reliable enough. Over time, they began to sell them to people as they realized there was a market for these things. And then Henry Ford came along, and he didn't invent the assembly line, but he did refine it, and he put it into action. He was the person who saw how there was economic, financial opportunity there to build something, but he didn't go with his hand out to government and say, I need billions of dollars to build an auto industry. There were all kinds of other competitors out there. That was the marketplace. That was essentially as close as we probably came in a long time to actually having some sort of a free market system. And from that, the American auto industry sprang up. But what we're getting right now is this public-private partnership, the government dictating, pushing, driving the change, not the market, not consumers, not because there's a particular product that consumers want. It doesn't matter if it's more efficient. It doesn't matter if it makes more sense to people. This is what they've decided that we want. They're going to use our tax dollars in order to make it happen. They're willing it into existence and pushing it. But they're using an economic, a fascistic economic model to do it. And they've been doing it for decades. They have refined this now to a point where all the countries are engaged, and they have taken economic fascism or corporatism, and they are using it, I would say, at this point to even oppress small and medium-sized businesses. We saw during the pandemic the largest transfer of wealth from the middle class and the poor, but mostly the middle class, to the elite, to the big money people. That's why we saw big companies like Costco and Walmart. They were allowed to stay open during the pandemic, while small businesses were forced to close. If you had a small independent shoe store, you had to close it down. But you could still go to Walmart and buy shoes because that was deemed an essential business. Amazon, mail order companies, they were still functioning. But small and medium-sized businesses, they took it on the chin and still are. Many of them did not survive. We as the middle class have been funneling tons of money into these big companies. And what are we seeing now? Here in Canada, well, we're seeing $13 billion being channeled toward Volkswagen to build a battery plant not very far from where I live. It will be one of the biggest electric vehicle battery facilities in North America, if not the world, when completed. Although we're seeing that a smaller battery plant down in Windsor, Ontario, that was also promised some government money, but not to that degree, a $6 billion deal, that is falling apart now. So I'm not sure that the government even has the money to push through these plans, but here they sit at the G7 this weekend in Hiroshima, talking about proceeding with these public-private partnerships using tax dollars to, handing over all these tax dollars to these big corporations to achieve their goals. And what else did we hear from the EU leader there, Ursula? She says that they're going to take mRNA technology for vaccines. What I think she said to Africa, right? Or was it Rwanda? In any event, they're pushing very hard on that. And we've seen how divisive that has been over the past 3 years. And again, they're using our public money, our tax dollars, to fund this and to help these big corporations. Multinational corporations, by the way. It became thus, especially from like the 70s, the 1980s, the 1990s, more and more of a progression toward a global economy. I think back to the way the auto industry was being transformed after, the 50s and the 60s, and then it became more global in nature, especially during the 80s and 90s, global supply chains. And they're taking our tax dollars and handing it over to these multinational corporations. No longer is a company like Ford or General Motors American. People may view them that way, but they are not. Nor is Volkswagen. None of these corporations are any more nationalistic. They're multinationals. And if you look at a company like General Motors today, their growth market is not even in North America. It's not in Canada. It is not in the United States. You know where it is? China. That's where they're focused. And they have started to build vehicles in China. They know that that is where the growth is. That's where the money is. That's where the standard of living is rising for the people. What we've been experiencing in North America is managed decline, degrowth. It's true. The middle class is being gutted. Middle class is in jeopardy. We're all experiencing now massive inflation because the government has been printing so much money. The more of something that you have, the less that it is worth. It's the law of supply and demand. That's a natural law. People keep talking about natural law. Well, there's a law of nature. That's an economic law that is inescapable. The more you have of something, the less it is worth. Supply and demand. If there's more of something on the market, it's worth less. If there's scarcity, the more scarcity there is, the more something is worth. If you cut the supply of gasoline in half and you have the same number of people who want it, the price of gas is going to go up. Supply and demand. It's a law of nature. So if they print all this money as they've been printing it, billions and trillions and trillions and billions, to service the debt that they've racked up and now to hand over more free money to corporations in order to fuel their grandiose New World Order, green agenda, blah, blah, blah. Well, the more of that money that they print, the more it's really a tax on us, the middle class, the average person. We're paying for it, both directly, because it's just being handed to these big companies, and indirectly through inflation, which is in itself a tax. Because as you get more inflation, the money that you've saved for responsibly, the money you've worked for all your life that goes into your savings and your retirement savings plans, anything you have in the bank, any money of any kind that you have, it becomes devalued. It becomes worth less. I had to buy a battery for my car this past week. And I thought back, it was only a few years ago, you could get a battery for a car for as little as about $80 or $90, maybe Canadian, if you needed one. And you get it, not a bad battery for about $80 to $90. Today, $160 plus tax comes to almost $200. In fairness, maybe you'd be pushing $100 for a car battery. Not that long ago, as I recall. But today, $160 plus tax, plus your core charge, came out to almost $200. And that wasn't a top-of-the-line battery for a car that I installed myself. It's not like I had a mechanic do it. Well, how much of an increase is that? Say from, over the last, 10 or 15 years. That's massive inflation. It's at least double, maybe 3 times the price. From about $80 to $200, maybe say $100 to $200, that's double. That's a 100% increase. That means that the money that I worked for, that you worked for, that we worked for, that we saved with, put in the bank, if we just had the same $100 from, say, the year 2000, today it would be worth about $50. Now, if you've invested that and you've had a return on your investment, then maybe that's, mitigated some of the erosion of value over time. But man, I'm telling you, that is really serious inflation. And right now, we've seen just in the past year, massive inflation where some grocery things have doubled in price, many grocery items. So I'd say in real terms, inflation running around 20%, maybe even higher in the area where I live right now. And that's a huge hit in terms of year over year. And if that continues for the next year, there's in just 2 years, 40%, a 40% hit on the value of your money. And why is that? Because of these public-private partnerships, all the money they're handing out, and now they're talking about, universal basic income, potentially. They're exploring that. If they start giving out free money to people who don't even have to go to work. You know what that's going to do? That will be billions and billions of dollars printed out of thin air and just given to people to make them think that they're getting something for free from the government so that they don't have to go to work. It's going to cause all kinds of unintended consequences, or maybe intended consequences, in the economy over the long run. And even the short run, really. It will cause labor shortages. It will cause the cost or the price of labor to go up. Therefore, in order for employers to get people to work, they'll have to pay much higher wages because so many people are going to be sitting on their butts at home. But also your taxes will have to go up. And it means that the money that you think you're getting for free isn't actually for free at all. And the people who do work, you're going to be working for a whole lot less because you're going to be subsidizing all the people who don't go to work. It's just the way that it works. They can spin it and sugarcoat it any way that they want, but you cannot escape the laws of economics ultimately. They can talk about free money, hand out all this free money to everybody. Oh, universal basic income. Just sit at home. You don't have to work. Here's free money to live on. Everybody has to have at least that. There you go. And don't get me wrong, I don't have a problem giving people a hand up. If they are really in need, I don't have a problem with that. I don't even have a problem with employment insurance programs where people actually pay into these programs through their taxes over time. So, some of these social programs, I don't really have a problem with it if we're providing a social safety net to catch people who have fallen through no fault of their own. But to just hand out billions of dollars to people, again, like we saw during CERB, it is insane. Why do you think that's one of the reasons we have so much inflation right now? This is the inflation reaction or result of giving out all the free money during the pandemic to people to keep the economy rolling. But there was no corresponding increase in productivity. In fact, we got the opposite because they were shutting so much stuff down. So they increased the money supply while they decreased the supply of goods and services. So, of course, we got inflation. It just took a while for it to find its way into the system to the point where we're seeing it manifest itself in terms of actual higher prices now. And what are we looking at with these guys, these world leaders that we have? They're sitting around the table at the G7, and they're pushing ahead with their public-private partnerships, and they don't care about the inflation. It doesn't really affect them. When the economy does collapse, they know it's coming because they have control over everything. It's economic fascism. They control it. They manipulate the interest rates. They manipulate the money supply. They have control of the corporations. They control the supply chains. It is a controlled economy. If anybody is telling you that this is capitalism, in terms of they're referencing free markets, it is not. There is really barely any kind of a free market in existence anymore, anywhere. Certainly not in Canada. A little more maybe in the US. But on the Canadian side, for sure, almost no free market. Everything is so regulated and controlled that you are at the mercy of this government-controlled corporatocracy. And they're just pushing harder and harder and harder with it. That is why your freedom is in jeopardy. That is how they're controlling you. The liberals, people sit here and they say the liberals, oh, they cooked the election. It's not, oh, no, they won. I guarantee you, they won. People voted for them en masse. The liberals don't need to cheat. They just buy the election with socialism, with promises of free money, with promises of this universal basic income. If, not to mention, legalized marijuana. which they tell you is like, that's freedom. Okay. Well, a lot of people voted for Justin Trudeau because of that issue alone. And I guess you can look at it that way. But while he was trying to free you with free marijuana, well, legalized, he was enslaving you with his socialism or his economic fascism. And the same thing is happening in the United States. I'm warning all you Americans down there, if you want socialized health care, you're just asking for enslavement. If you have it, if you model it after what we have here in Canada, they've got you by the short and curlies, man. One place to go for your health care, no choice. They have a policy in this country which they refer to as universality. It means equal healthcare for everyone. Nobody's allowed to jump the queue, theoretically. It means everybody has to get in line and everybody gets the same. You can't buy better healthcare. There are only certain kinds of procedures, very, specifically identified and defined, what you're allowed to get from any kind of a private healthcare setting. That's how they control you. Look at what's going on right now. It's a lie anyway, but people are freaking out because of Bill S-233. I referred to that this past week. And this is why, all you guys out there, all right, all of you guys, you are so worried about your freedom. You don't want the government to control you. And yet you've got these people telling you that Bill S-233 is about forcing you to get a vaccination in order to qualify for employment insurance or welfare or universal basic income or any of these other government programs. And people are freaking on the freedom side. Well, they can't do that. Well, how are they controlling you? It's not the forced vaccination that's controlling you, folks. Not that this is true anyway. The whole thing is bogus. Bill S-233 has nothing to do with forced vaccinations. Zero. I read the whole document to you on this program the other night. The people telling you this, they either do not understand or they're just outright lying to you and just trying to scare the crap out of you. But regardless, that isn't where they're controlling you anyway. You know how they control you? It's with the free money. I want to be free. Where's my free money? I want to be free. Where's my free health care? I don't want to get vaccinated. How come I have to be vaccinated in order to get the health care that I want for free? Because it's free. Because the price you pay for free stuff is your freedom. Oh, yeah. Haven't figured that out yet? There you go. That's how they do it. I want free healthcare. No problem. You get free healthcare, but you have to do exactly what we say. If you want the free healthcare, we'll pay for it with your tax dollars. But in order to qualify, you got to get a thing in the arm and you got to get in line. And you're not allowed to go anyplace else because of why? Universality. Because, it just wouldn't be fair or equitable to allow you to have a choice to go anyplace else. Wouldn't be fair to let you go to a private clinic and pay extra to jump the queue. No, no, no. Universality. So just get in line like everybody else. No cheating. Everybody's got to get in line. Oh, but yeah, then they ration the care, right? Because why? Because they're giving it away. So the laws of supply and demand are all screwed up. If you have unlimited supply and virtually unlimited demand, well, where does that end? The system goes haywire. They have to regulate the supply and demand curve in some fashion. So if you've taken something and you've made it single source only, and you've taken the price mechanism right out of it by making it free, the only way they can regulate the supply and demand economic curves is to regulate the supply. That's the only thing they have control of at that point. And they have to put something in place there. Otherwise, nothing works. So they ration the care. If it's free, people line up and it's like they just come. They just do it with no regard for really what it costs. Now, you can argue that people don't line up willy-nilly for healthcare, but it does increase the supply, the demand curve so much that it's the only way they can regulate things. That's why you see rationing of care. They don't perform operations on people past a certain age, certain operations. They will let you die. They don't put it in quite that way, but they don't give you a choice. They decide who lives and dies, literally. That's the dirty little secret of socialized healthcare. The other dirty little secret, of course, is that people who have the money actually do avail themselves of the second tier of healthcare, which is to leave the country. In the United States, you still have choices. So many Canadians with money just cross the border, go down and buy their healthcare in the United States and get first-class care down there and pay the price and then come back. It's a dirty little secret. But they are enslaving you with your own money, and people cheer for it. They ask for it. They beg for it in this country. If you want true freedom, you need to decouple yourself from the system in some way so that the government doesn't have control of you. A lot of you try to look at that, but so many people can't seem to understand or figure it out. That's how it works. Anytime they give you something for free, you pay for it with a little bit more of your freedom, whatever it is. So if you're prepared to accept personal responsibility for you, you can live completely free. You can remove yourself completely from the system. And actually, that was the message, wasn't it, during the pandemic? But that was something that people really just didn't want to accept. It was unpalatable. How could I survive if I can't participate in society? Because that was the message. It was like, well, you don't have to. We're not, Justin Trudeau says, I didn't force anyone to do anything. They had a choice. All you had to do was give up your job. All you had to do was get the jab. It was your choice. You could get the thing in the arm or you could give up your job. You could get the thing in the arm or you could, and then you could go to McDonald's. If you want, but you had a choice. It just means you just can't participate. But you see, if there was choice in the system, if there was a private alternative, which the government neither funded nor regulated to a point where they could control it so that they could say to a doctor, for instance, no, you are not allowed to see a patient unless they get a thing in the arm. Oh, no, they're saying right now that you can't get a heart transplant unless you've been jabberooed. That's a fact. But if there were private clinics that weren't regulated to that degree, or private hospitals, you didn't want to get jabberooed and you still need a heart transplant, you could go over to the private side. Maybe there'd be 3 different options. Who knows? But you could go over there and you would have the freedom to choose. But if they take that out of the equation, then you can't avail yourself of that. That's the reality of it. People don't want to hear that though, man. They don't want to hear it. They just want the free stuff and they want their freedom. But honestly, you can't have both. It's not going to happen. You have to take personal responsibility for yourself, because anytime you engage in a transaction with someone, there's a debt to be paid. That's why I fixed my own car again today, because I don't want the economic burden of having to pay a mechanic. So I did the work myself. That's one of the ways I decouple myself from the tyranny of the economy, the tyranny of the government. I become as independent as I possibly can. I've tried to disengage from the economy as much as I possibly can, become entirely self-sufficient as self-sufficient as I possibly can. I dip in to the system where I need to, and any place I can extract myself from the system, I extract myself. I am self-sufficient. I run my own businesses. I fix my own stuff. I don't reach out. I don't buy services or products if I don't absolutely need to. If I can make something myself, I will try to make it. I have tools and things around here to make myself as self-sufficient as I possibly can. People talk about growing their own food and things like that, and I suppose I could get into that too, but I'm more focused on other ways of becoming self-sufficient. The food thing doesn't concern me as much. I will stock up on food so I don't have to grow the food. To me, that seems it's like more efficient. But I will fix my own stuff and do my own house repairs and do things for myself to become self-sufficient so that I'm not enslaved to the system. And there's really three ways of main ways of viewing an economic system. We've just talked about this economic fascism that we're seeing rolled out at the G7, not rolled out, but perpetuated because they are full steam ahead with it. That's what they are, is they're economic corporatists, these G7 leading nations. Or you can look at it more in terms of a communistic model where they don't engage so much in public-private partnerships quite so much. What they do is they nationalize things. So that's a communistic approach. Instead of a government saying to big companies, we want to be in partnership with you and you kind of run things, you manage it, we'll give you tax dollars to help leverage your investments and help you with your capital expenditures and capital creation. You manage it, but we regulate it, and we ultimately dictate and control what ends up being produced. We tell you what to produce, you produce it. But a communist model is about nationalizing things, and that's putting it all under the umbrella of the government and saying to the big corporations, either take a hike, we're going to run this as a national government operation, and they would set up their own government-run system. So they take the corporations out of it, and they sell that idea to the people by saying, well, it's the government, and therefore it is the people. And we're running it for the people. It is a collectivist approach, a communist approach to running the economy. So it's a different idea. Still public money being used to fund all of this stuff, but it's all being controlled and all being directed by the government. They're taking the corporations kind of out of it. What we've seen in reality is sort of a hybrid system in every country. You don't get a pure communistic system these days. You don't get a pure capitalistic system. You see sort of a mercantilist system in China. They're all running in very similar kinds of ways, but really the bigger issue is about national sovereignty and whether a country is able to live or survive on its own as a sovereign entity without being dictated to by other countries. And they're using economic warfare as part of this third world war and this struggle globally to determine who ultimately has the power. Is it the sovereign state, or is it this new world order and a one world government? And that is also what this big conflict between right now NATO, United States, and Russia is about. That's what this conflict is about between the United States, NATO, and China. The whole controversy surrounding Taiwan. Ultimately, that's the bigger picture. It's about what kind of a world are we going to live in ultimately? Is it going to be a one world government, a new world order with a new rules-based international order dictating how all countries in the world behave and what laws they have to abide by internationally? That would govern everything, including, shipping channels and, what happens when two ships run into each other and international trade and all of these international regulations. So what kind of a future we have? Or is it going to be an ongoing world where it's individual countries, individually sovereign, where they determine their own destinies, both economically and therefore culturally as well, determine who is allowed to come into their countries and who isn't, immigration, open borders, closed borders. These are the issues. And all of these other issues like climate change and gender ideology, I mean, you pick your issue, those other issues, they're overlaid on top and they become the political icing on the cake that people debate and get distracted with in many ways. And those are the tools they use also to manipulate things politically. But tonight, what we're seeing at the G7 is this amplification of public-private partnerships and a push toward a new world order through the imposition or the attempted imposition of a rules-based international order. And that is what they are trying to impose on Russia. Not so successfully in Bakhmut. And I could go on and on about this and talk about the monarchy and the global reach of the crown and going into the history of all of that as well. But just look at it from that macro perspective, and you truly begin to understand why things are organized the way that they are and why when you start a small business, it's like you get hammered. Honestly, I would not start. I used to own some retail and like small little shops, video stores, hobby shops. I'd never do it again because as a small business owner, I saw the way that the big companies and the government were getting together at that time. And this goes back, 20, 25 years ago. It was difficult to even survive back then. It wasn't like it was in the 1970s. By the time, I got into the 80s and early 90s, that's when I was doing it. It was as a small business owner, you were penalized for your efforts. And today, like freaking forget it. Not interested in running a small business anymore because of the way the taxation system works, the labor laws, everything. They penalize you, man. They don't like you. The government doesn't want you. They don't like you because it's hard for them to control you when you're running a small business like that. So yeah, I believe in running a small business, but in a very specific kinds of businesses. You don't want to be going head to head with Amazon. You don't want to be going head to head with Walmart. You don't want, honestly, to get yourself into a position where you're competing with any really big company and holding responsibility for staffing and all of those kinds of things, because the government will hammer you and you don't get any subsidies or handouts. I mean, what if I wanted to start a car company? Could I just do it with my own money? No way. Can't do it. You have to have government backing. It's just the way it works. And we have only ourselves to blame for these kinds of things. If you wanted to get into the business of having, being a concert promoter, I wouldn't do that. No freaking way. I wouldn't do it anymore. You can't even put on an event like a concert, hire like a big name band, bring them in and expect to make money unless you have some sort of government assistance or handout or government involvement now. In my community here, in just about every town, frankly, I see it almost every year where they have concerts in the park with big name acts, and they use even municipal dollars, municipal government money to pay for the bands. And sometimes they make the concerts free now. There's another big music festival, a country music festival not far from here, and they get big government grants too to put that on. They go cap in hand every year looking for a handout and say they can't survive without it. There's another one up the road in London. They also look for government money every year. When they can't, if they can't get it, they can't put it on. And the reason they can't put it on is because the next festival down the road is putting one on with government assistance. So the government picks the winners and the losers. And then everybody says, and I think rightly so at this point, well, the arts can't survive if we don't have government handouts. That's because everybody gets government handouts. And once you start handing them out, you can't survive without it because you can't compete. How can you compete with the concert down the highway, or even, next in the next block over, or maybe in the next week? How can you compete with that if they get a giant handout from the government and you get zero? You have no money for promotion. You don't have the same amount of money for anything. So they get to pick the winners and the losers, and then they get to control what comes in, who wins, who loses. And that's not freedom. That's government control. How did I get on this? I just started going on and on and on about it. But it's what people don't understand about the system. And it's because we've asked for it. We voted for it. We demand it. I want my free stuff. Yeah, well then get ready to cough up your freedom. I don't want all the free stuff. I want to get back to a place myself, and this is me so editorializing tonight after watching this blah, blah, blah from the G7 that most people don't pay attention to. This is where the problem starts. They're telling you what they're doing. They're laying it out, but people don't understand economics. They don't understand what they're doing up there and why what's going on this weekend in Hiroshima is going to have a direct impact on our lives and our freedom. I want to get back to a place where we do have a social safety net to help people who have fallen and need assistance, who, the least fortunate, the people who really, really need help. And then we have, through prosperity generated through the economy, the ability to help those who need the help. That's where I'd like to be, but also get back to a place where there's not so much government involvement and government and it's not so much dependence on government that we become enslaved by it, where we have no choice anymore, where the only place you can go to get the support or the assistance or the social engagement that you need to survive is through government. It's grown to a huge place. And people say, well, it's a communist takeover in the country. Well, how did we get here? It's because I think federally now, what about 50% of all the employment, it comes from some sort of government employment now? In this town here, the biggest employer in my hometown is the municipality, the municipal government. That's the biggest employer. We need more industry. We need more private business. We need a real free market again. We need entrepreneurs to come in and not rely on government money, but invest in innovative industry, production, services that are a response to consumer demand, not a response to a government handout for some program. That's how you get rich in this country now. You wait for some government program to come along. where they're going to hand out a bunch of money and then you wrap a business around that. Case in point, solar energy. The solar energy industry in Ontario, they came out with what they called the microfit program, and they were enticing investors and entrepreneurs to set up solar energy companies to invest in the solar energy industry with giant subsidies for people who set up solar arrays, especially on farmland. And they were paying above market value for the electricity that these systems would generate in order to entice people on 20-year contracts to purchase these things and then entice people to set up the companies to come in and build these things. But that whole thing only lasted about a year and maybe a half. It created a boom in the solar energy industry here for about a year and a half. But the end result was that it wasn't sustainable because they were paying, I think it was 50.3 cents per kilowatt hour at the time, which was way above the market value. So they were paying more for the electricity coming off those solar panels than they were selling it for to consumers, us. So then ultimately what ends up happening, electricity rates went up to the point where people couldn't afford it. And it was also because of the wind turbine deals that they were setting up under a similar kind of a program that really appealed more to the larger corporations rather than, mid-size investment companies and entrepreneurs. But it wasn't sustainable. So they shut the program down after about a year and a half, canceled that, reduced the payouts for the new contracts, but the old ones were still paying out because they were on contract for 20 some years at these high levels. And then the people couldn't afford the electricity. So you know what they've done? They just cooked the books and they said, okay, we're going to give people a tax rebate and we're going to artificially lower the electricity rates. And then they subsidize it back in with more tax dollars on the other side. And then they finance that with more debt. And then we just get more inflation because they have to print more money. And it's a cycle, a vicious cycle. And so people feel or think that they're not paying for the higher hydro rates or electricity rates in this case. Not hydro, it's electricity from solar, not from hydroelectric power. But we're paying more for everything because of the wind and the solar systems, solar energy systems that we put in place that are not as efficient, not as cost effective, and we end up paying for it. We just mask it. The government masks it so you don't see it. They just tax you over here and incur more debt over there. And people feel better about it because they lowered the price over here. Smoke and mirrors. Take it for what it's worth, man. Me, I want the government out of my life. I want less and less of it because they just make everything worse and worse. And they lie to us about how they're going to fix everything. And it's like I said, it's smoke and mirrors, especially when it comes to the economy and all of this energy stuff and the green environment. And they're not telling us the truth. And they bribe entire communities, don't they, with our tax dollars. Hey, St. Thomas, Ontario, we're bringing Volkswagen to your community with a $13 billion investment. Yeah, it's our tax money, and they're giving it to Volkswagen. And people are like, yay, jobs. $13 billion for how many jobs? If they took the $13 billion and just gave it back to the people, how much money do you think, how far would that go? Canada only has 30 some million people in it. If they just took the 13 billion and divided it up between all 30 some million people, we'd have a chunk of change. Thank you, Red. You too, pal. What other great comments do we have tonight? Here's Red Will. Here's another one from Red. As RFK Jr. ask RFK Jr. about the Epstein files. I don't know what that means. Anyway, I kind of got off on a tangent there. That's me offering up my opinion. Not the first time, won't be the last. Let's take a break. I'll be right back.
Greetings, brave Mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals, defenders of individual rights and freedoms, credible, trusted, grounded in reality. Maverick News, Maverick News. Defending free speech, free speech. Donate at freedomreporters.com. Do it now. Tomorrow may be too late. Maverick News. The world is watching.
So here I sit and I'm just looking right now and I'm checking, headlines on other news services. And I see, over here at CTV, they're saying that the chief economist for the Bank of Nova Scotia is what else? He's calling for an interest rate hike. He says it's required because of inflation. So, he's the chief economist for one of the biggest banks in Canada. He's released his forecast. And he's saying that he thinks a 25 basis points move is required next month. Not everybody's agreeing with that, of course, but they're going to have to do something because right now we know that the inflation rate, the official inflation rate is around 4.4, 4.3%. That's more than double what their target of 2% is. And as I've said, that's cooked, man. You go to the grocery store, look at the price of food. I've seen a lot of products twice the price over the past year. Double. And really in the last 3 or 4 months especially, it's really come through the system. Supply chains are coming back online. It seems like we're getting some improvement there, but inflation is high. And they need to rein it in. And traditionally, the way that they do that is through higher interest rates, which they control. Interest rates are not just set through the market. The prime rates, the main Bank of Canada rate, it's just artificially set. They pick it. So the more they increase that, the more it increases the price of money. It slows the economy down because it makes it harder for people, consumers, to consume goods. Anyway, we've been on the economy long enough. The only point that I'm making is that after my rant on the economy, here I go and I just look at the headlines and bam. This information actually came out Thursday, but just making headlines now. And it just reinforces the fact that they need to find ways to calm things down. I say increase supply by increasing productivity. That's the way I think we can get out of this. And technology can help on that front too. There's one little thing that I just actually do want to mention because, some of my friends who are, who advocate more for a communistic approach have been on this program actually, and they've said that, I would say erroneously, that it's their perspective that technology like automation reduces the wealth of the working class because it takes jobs away. So they're afraid of things like automated self-checkout. I still believe that's a misguided perspective. It's not accurate because historically we've seen that technology and more automation actually increases the standard of living for everyone. It creates a rising tide, which raises all boats ultimately. It can be disruptive for sure, and always is actually, because it forces some people out of certain industries, but it creates new economic opportunities and often higher paying, higher quality employment opportunities for people overall. So for instance, just look back at the assembly line, and I used Henry Ford as an example some time ago in this conversation. If you look at the assembly line, yeah, you could argue that it put some people out of work because you didn't have people just hand assembling a car with, this guy's over here putting a wheel on, and then this guy is over here, and they're assembling it bits and pieces at a time in a garage someplace, and just kind of going at it. On an assembly line, everything becomes mass production. As a result, you end up with mass produced consumer goods produced at economies of scale. It reduces the cost of those goods for everyone, including the people who work in those factories, including the poorest people in society. It's mass production that made automobiles affordable for the masses. That's how we got the Model T Ford. That's how we got the Volkswagen Beetle. Affordable, mass-produced mechanization cars, industrialization. You're seeing now that artificial intelligence is coming online. You're seeing automated self-checkouts. Yeah, maybe some cashiers have lost their jobs, but they have to have computer programmers and people to service those automated checkouts. And because they've eliminated some of the labor at the retail level, it keeps costs for consumer goods lower. So when you go to Walmart or you go to these big stores or wherever you're going, and these kind of automated checkouts might even become viable for smaller businesses. And I'm big on small business, but at the same time, I also recognize that automation keeps costs down for the masses. And so we all benefit with lower prices. Lower prices means you don't need to make as much money or work as hard to get the same value from your purchases. If every car was hand assembled today, you'd be paying many, many times the cost when you go to buy a car, new or used. They'd be worth a whole lot more money because so much more labor would be going into it. And in all of the parts, honestly, which are also mass produced in factories. So you see, we all end up benefiting from the lower cost of the goods produced. So even if you're not working at the factory, even if you're not directly involved in the production of something, you're still benefiting because you can now purchase it for a lower price. And while some people may have lost their jobs, they move into other related industries or different industries, and it creates other new economic opportunities. It's just that it's very disruptive and scary for people. I totally get it. Scary for me too. Even the media industry is evolving all the time because of new technology, right? So I hold out hope, man. That's kind of what I'm getting at here. I'm not all doom and gloom. I think that there's a silver lining to a lot of this stuff. If we can just keep the government at bay, keep it in check, and I believe that we can, because we still have the power of the people, power of the masses, political power. But Rick, it doesn't matter who we vote for because it's only going to be one or the other. Well, no, not really. If you look at the number of parties, even in the House of Commons in Canada today, how many parties are represented? NDP, Liberal, Progressive or Conservative Party of Canada, the Green Party, the Bloc Québécois. There's 5 political parties. If the PPC gets elected, that'd be 6. And those are just the ones that have elected or might, eventually in these by-elections, might end up, have members of parliament sitting elected members in the House, representing the people or the commons. So there is hope. There's 6 actual viable parties that they're represented. They're recognized in the polls. 6 different parties, different options for people to choose from. But it's up to the people. What are you going to vote for? People going to keep on voting for the same crap? Maybe. Why do they do that? I just told you, because they buy it. Justin will buy it. Until people get so fed up, and I think maybe we're there finally, that they vote for something different. And people talk about the Agenda 2030 and the SDGs. Well, I have to tell you something. I don't like any of that either. But you have to understand that stuff is not binding. Those are international goals from the United Nations, the World Health Organization, the World Economic Forum. None of those things are binding on our government. We convince our politicians or elect politicians to power who reject those ideas, those ideologies, and those international rules-based order goals, these goals of the New World Order. We elect politicians who are more nationalist in scope, saying Canada first, America first, USA first, people first, growth first. You get politicians in there who believe in that stuff, and all that international stuff goes right out the window. There's nothing forcing us to accept any of it except the politicians that we elect. So it's a choice, isn't it? So what's the solution to that? You have to win the hearts and the minds of the people with sound arguments, campaigns, truth. Truth, 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 truth. Focus on the truth. And sound, solid arguments. And eventually you'll win the people over, I believe. But traditionally, through history, we've seen this play out, haven't we? Many times in the past. People want free stuff. And you should never underestimate the power of free. I'll be right back.
Fighting the Great Reset. By leading the Great Resistance. Maverick News. The antivirus programs for your mind. Maverick News. The world is watching.
Okay, I'm back. Let's take a look now at the wildfire situation out in Alberta. It's going to go to the wildfire status dashboard. 87 active wildfires tonight. So the number down just a little bit. That's encouraging. We're seeing these red ones, which are out of control. Let's give them a count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25. So it looks like the number of fires considered to be out of control also down a little bit, because at last count yesterday, we were up around 32, I believe, out of control. On the map tonight, though, only about 25. Not necessarily completely accurate here because some of these are overlapping, but I think we're pretty close. The yellow ones are being held, not expected to spread beyond the perimeters that have been identified. The green ones are considered under control, and there are quite a few of those tonight. So I think some progress is being made, but still very serious. A lot of people still out of their homes. And we definitely need to be keeping an eye on things out there. And our thoughts are still with the folks out in Western Canada, Saskatchewan, Alberta, British Columbia, where these wildfires are threatening entire towns. Stay safe out there, folks. Okay, that gets us to almost 8 o'clock, so I'll open up the phone lines. We'll take a few calls while I push the buttons and get things set up. I'll run this, and I'll be right back.
The New World Order. Government overreach. The Great Reset. Mainstream media lies. Now more than ever, independent voices are needed. Donate now at freedomreporters.com. That's freedomreporters.com. Maverick News. The antivirus program for your mind.
Oh, before we get to the phones, a couple of other little things I wanted to run for you tonight. I almost forgot these. I think you will enjoy these. If they don't make your head explode first. Okay, here's the first one. Found this clip. This is in Seattle. God help us all. Oh my goodness. Look at this.
Diaz! I am calling you out, you little bitch! Hang on. Hey, it's your rent. No, it's step over here. All right. Drop the bat. Just drop it. Sit down on the curb. Hold on. That's it. Sit on the curb for now. We'll get there. Up? Go to the car? Go to the car. Fine. Go fine. All right. So that's your car. Are you? It's your car? What's going on, man? You read that, can't you? That's what's going on. Hey.
Okay. Yeah, so that's Seattle. Yeah, it's a crazy world. Maybe it's not fair to focus on that stuff so much. You know, the guy's clearly got some issues. And so does this person. This is Senator Michaela Kavanaugh. I don't know. This is in Nebraska. And ran across this. You thought that was crazy? This person actually got elected to public office. Look at this. Check this out.
will not stop tomorrow. You are loved. You matter. You belong here.
Okay, did you get the message? Just thought I'd share that. What a crazy world. Before we get to the phones, if you haven't liked, shared, subscribed, please consider doing that on our YouTube channel, Facebook. If you do subscribe on YouTube, please make sure you hit the notification bell so that you receive notification when we post new videos and new live streams, which is every day, pretty much at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. If you're new to the channel, welcome, and please consider subscribing, and please consider subscribing over on Rumble. It's more of a free speech platform, and obviously our future is over there. Because we can't always talk about the things that we want to talk about on other platforms, but on Rumble, it gives all of us a freer voice to discuss the things that we want to discuss with far less chance of being outright censored or banned. So yeah, please consider subscribing on Rumble. And you can support the channel by donating at freedomreporters.com, freedomreporters.com. That takes you to the PayPal page. We also receive support over at the Give Send Go page through this URL, which is maverickdonations.com. The donations help to fund the operation here. It pays for the phone system, the call-in phone system, so we can put everybody in the queue. We pay for it by the minute. Every time someone is on the show talking, it costs money. So that costs money. The subscriptions to the software, to some of these platforms, even over at Rumble, we pay a fee for our pro accounts in order to provide enough bandwidth to carry the program that we carry. It's not free. It costs us money. We have to pay for the software to edit videos and keep everything running. The streaming software, we pay, subscription fee for all of that. We're on multiple platforms. There are fees for a lot of different things that people don't even think about. Things that I don't even think about. The graphics software. The list goes on. And I even actually start to lose track sometimes of the different things that cost us money each month. But the donations, they help. We're demonetized on YouTube. We are 100% totally funded through donations coming from you guys, the viewers. So if you like what we're doing, it's up to you to support it. And that's just the bottom line. And I'm extremely grateful for everyone who has come forward to support the channel in that way. Now, t-shirts. We do, we do have some t-shirts. We have some more coming. And we had a contest going last night. And it was FU Friday. And the contest was whoever could determine the exact number of FUs used by Leo, Mouth of the South, in his call-in. The person who counted the number correctly was going to get a free t-shirt. Well, I said the first person to come up with the right number would win. And we actually have two winners. I'll announce those winners on the next program. But two people will be getting a free t-shirt. So that was fun. And more t-shirts coming. So all that being said, it is time to go to the phones now. So here is our first caller. Let me get this cranked up here, though. I have to system set up. Almost there. I have to click this button and that button. And I'm clicking buttons that you can't see. You don't know what I'm doing behind the scenes. But I kind of have a general idea of what I need to do to set this up because I've done it before. And there's There's that, and click on that. We're almost there, folks. Bear with me just one more moment, and we will be going to our very first caller. And we'll do this. There we go. We're rocking and rolling. And we're ready to go to the phones. Here's our first caller of the night. Okay, who do we have on the line? Go ahead. Hello.
Yeah, I want to talk about Rockefeller.
Okay.
But before I do that, I just want to talk about Zelensky. Recently has been. Oh, sorry, I turned the stream off so you don't have the noise.
Sure thing.
Zelensky, before the G7 at the moment, he flew to England to beg more money for HIMARS rockets and gold and all the things that he loves.
Yeah.
And he was greeted by our Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, who's Indian, but he's the Prime Minister of Britain.
Yeah.
And Rishi Sunak said that Zelensky is the greatest war leader since Winston Churchill.
Yeah. Well, I guess it depends on your perspective, right? I don't remember Winston Churchill dancing in skin-tight show pants and women's high heels. But I digress.
It's sick. It's abnormal. It's strange. It's bizarre. It's we have 650 MPs in the British Parliament, and not one of the 650 has ever spoken up about the Ukraine war because they're 100% cowards.
Yeah. Same in Canada.
And that's it for my first point. My second point, which is my main one, is about Rockefeller.
Yep.
And yesterday I saw a story. It's unsubstantiated. It's not journalism. It's probably not even real, but I'm still going to go ahead and say that one of the Rockefellers, 11 months before 9/11, had a conversation with one of his friends. This friend was a person who was introduced to him years before, was never part of the circle, but over the years they became friends. He's produced a transcript as best as he can to recall the conversation where the Rockefeller of the time said, or hinted, in 11 months' time, an incident will occur that will propel the American policy of a war on terror. The war on terror was officially launched in 1999, but by 2001, for 9/11, it was, ready to be launched into every corner of the earth if the earth is flat. That's it, Billy.
Okay. All right. I did you say the earth is flat at the end? Is that what you said? Did I get that right?
Just a joke. I watched 30 minutes of a man the other day seriously discussing that we live on a flat earth.
Yeah.
And there was one point he had, and I went, oh, yeah. Because if you could get the lunar module, and he was looking, the close-ups of the photographs, the welding and the fitting, and if you could submerge it underwater, I'd watch if there was a bubble coming up.
Did you see that Jeff Bezos got the contract to build the lunar lander? I just saw that today.
No.
Yeah, they've awarded him the contract because, of course, they want to go back to the moon, right? So I guess Jeff Bezos, he's not rich enough. They're going to make him richer. So he gets to build the lunar lander. His company, what do they call it? Orion, I don't know, the space dildo company. I'm sorry, like his stupid rocket ship looks like a giant thing. I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah, it's ego. It is an extension of ego. When a man is given unlimited resources and very limited opposition, I'd do the same thing. I would build a rocket in the shape of my penis and show it to 4 billion people before I launch it into space.
Just, oh my God, what kind of a world are we living in? You know, you call up and you talk about this Rockefeller thing, and that's the most sane thing I think I've heard in a month. So that just shows you where we're at, right? You say it's probably not true.
Yeah.
Could be true.
Yeah, well, there's a channel on DLive called PSB, and it's I don't know. I'll just call it a conspiracy theory channel. It's excellent news, really cutting edge. And, you know, the presenters on it are not professionals. They're not even as professional as you, Rick. They're just people who've been brought up in the right way and have become, you know, journalists in their own homes and discovering all kinds of information that no one ever could have believed existed. And they're not brilliant people. Well, one of the presenters he's on finance and he's dynamite. But the rest are just homegrown folks. And the stories that they can, you know, find.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of information out there that that is true, and then there's other stuff, of course, that is maybe has a grain of truth in it, but is absolutely not. So it's becoming more and more difficult to distinguish between the two, truth and crazy stuff. So
no, I think there's a much better distinction than that. They introduced was it misinformation and disinformation,
right?
And you cannot really disagree because they do have definitions. But then the third category was malinformation. Malinformation, according to Edward Snowden, is the distinction where it's either convenient or inconvenient for power to have that information released. Malinformation was introduced, I don't know, I think the idea was first back in 2005 for malinformation. But yeah, that's the danger. That's the definition of something that has never been legal and is seeped through into every algorithm to determine right and wrong, to the point where you can be accused for malinformation now and face criminal prosecution.
Yeah, that's true. That is true. Strange times, dangerous
all right,
times.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. And
I think I did all right. I've talked enough. I'm gonna run while I'm ahead. But
Okay.
yeah, thank you for listening.
Thank
Cheers.
you. I appreciate the call.
Bye.
Yeah, certainly deserves more discussion at a later date. Good call. Kind of like that. And who do we have now? This is strange stuff on the screen. I think it's
the Dragon, my friend.
Dragon.
It's your good old friend from Montreal.
How are you?
I'm doing great, actually.
Good.
Well, I was being, how can I put it? WEF, man. They are scaring the shit out of my little piece of crap that I am. Seriously, man. What are they up to now? Building cities in a building. What the fuck is that? Seriously. Well, you know what? I think it's time, my friends, to put ourselves into it. I mean, they really want that. Or if they really want to get us into a fascism kind of state, well, we probably should show them who's the fascism. I don't know if you catch my drift, but we need to push it. You know, guys, don't stay on your butt. Call the piece of shit. Put your word there. Don't attack them, but at least tell them what you think. That's probably one way to try. How can I stay positive in all that, right?
Okay.
And how's our friend Fred out there?
Well, he's
Is he
okay.
doing great?
I didn't set up the Freedom Fred fish cam tonight. I thought about it, but I was a little bit rushed in getting the program ready for this evening, and I just didn't turn it on. But he's fine. He'll be back. He'll be back. He's getting a little bit of a break from his social media duties tonight. So there you go.
Yeah, because he has to pay his rent, right?
He does. Yeah, but he deserves a day off.
I mean, we don't live in a free society. I mean, the freeness of our society needs to be paid off in a way, right?
Yes. Yeah. Well,
as you said it earlier.
Yeah,
it's kind of true, though. I mean, you need to pay your services, but in a way, there's always few ways to pay it. But the government takes it in, I would say, in a bad direction, isn't it?
Well,
I mean,
a lot of people won't agree with the way, the way I laid out that scenario, my views on the economy and the way that it's used to control people. But people they're scared. They're worried about being controlled. And I think people don't really understand how the government will ultimately control us. That people are worried about these, what they're saying are 15-minute cities. That's opponents of the government branding a political objective, a social engineering objective by the woke left and the globalists. That's a branding thing that has been affixed to this. I kind of view 15-minute cities in a slightly different way. I certainly am not in favor of them. I don't like where it's going. I don't view them in the same way that they're being portrayed to people through this simplistic 15-minute city explanation, if I can put it to you that way. Because I don't think, like most things in life, all things in life, really, things are not black and white. There's shades of gray. And to really defend against these government encroachments into our lives, I think we need to realistically and fully understand these issues and not grasp onto these things in a cliched manner.
Right. I mean, we might end up one day and say, if you have seen the movie Escape from LA with Kurt Russell, you know what I mean? It's like they are inside, what's say,
a prison
outside.
Well, if there was Escape from New York,
it's a prison
first, right? So New York City became,
the
whole city became a prison.
Yeah. Exactly.
So
I mean, this is, I think, where we all think that it's going to end up one day.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's scary.
See, I
do
agree with this premise that they don't want you to drive. They want to get rid of cars. I've said that for a long time. I know that. They don't want traffic congestion. This urban planning objective that they have, that the political opponents are branding as 15-minute cities. Yes, they do want things to be within a 15-minute walk or bike ride in where you live. Yes, they don't want you driving your car as much. So
in Verdun, where I live, most of the time in summer, there's the biggest street here, Wellington Street, is basically closed for cars, and it's just for people walking there, or you can bike, you can roll on skate or something like that, but basically it's just for they have done that for a few years now.
Yeah,
So it's basically what it is.
And they're pushing more and more for these things, more bike lanes, more use of bicycles. They want to use urban planning to bring businesses and the services into a closer area, so people don't have to travel as far to get to the places where they want to go. But in people's minds, what's being sold to us is this idea that it'll be a prison and you won't be allowed to leave. They're going to lock you down and you're going to be living in a building. You'll never be able to come out, right? And you'll be eating bugs. Well, they do want you to eat bugs, but it's not going to fit that cliche. People have this, I know what they have in their minds, and I don't agree with any of the objectives, but it's more about a system of taxation. And if you drive outside of certain areas and you go through checkpoints, it becomes like toll roads. So you get a bill in the mail, or you get taxed for it,
right,
in order to prevent you from driving as much. So it costs you more. It's like a carbon tax. And I certainly see how it all works, and how they want to roll that out, but I don't see it working. Honestly, I can see them building maybe some new communities like that, but what are they going to do? Are they going to like bulldoze entire suburbs and force everybody out of there? Like, they're not going to do this. They can't. And the people would never stand for it. It's just not going to happen that way.
No, there would be an uprising way before that happened, and I think the WEF knows that.
Yeah.
And they don't want us to get to that end.
Yeah. So,
this is a thing.
I think we just need to look at these things realistically, and then we can effectively push back against this stuff. But if we're looking at things in a completely unrealistic way, if it's all driven by emotion, if we're not dealing in facts, and we're not dealing with pieces of legislation in a proper manner, then we're just running around in circles and we're wasting our energy, because we're going to expend our energy trying to affect solutions that will never work because we're off target. I could
exactly.
There were a bunch of things that on social media just today that I was watching where people are being misled, grossly misled. And I was going to maybe talk about it tonight, and I'm just not going to get into it. I just don't have the stamina for it again.
No, the misleading is by design. It's just to brainwash everyone, so we don't have to look everywhere. Well, it's like, look, one of my friends have told me something, and it's kind of true. I mean, when we look, say, at a journalistic article, people doesn't mostly pass the first paragraph. So, I mean, you need to look into it mostly, because if you look into it, you might say or see that it's not the journalism or the journalistic point of view, but someone's point of view that is being brought to, and this is how they trying to push you some ideas around. So,
yeah. Well, anyway.
So this is the way I feel.
Sure.
So, Ondi, I will wish you all a good night, and don't eat the bugs. Right?
That's right.
Don't eat them.
And see, they're
have a good one,
realistic
guys.
Again, just to touch on that is, they're going to try and feed you the bugs without you knowing it. They're going to grind them up and they're going to put them into processed foods. So if you don't want to eat the bugs, check the ingredients on anything you buy that's packaged foods.
I got one for you. Proteins bar, don't buy it. They have actually those little thing in there. So be aware.
That's right. That's how they're getting it to you.
All right.
Thank you, Dragon. Man, thank you, sir.
My pleasure.
Okay, see ya.
Have a good one.
Okay, is this Bob?
Yeah, hi Rick. How you doing?
I'm fine. How are you?
I'm fine, thanks. Yeah, a lot of interesting stuff you had there to say today. I don't know where to even begin with any of these things, but about government, less government. I believe that was your idea.
Yeah, generally speaking.
Generally speaking.
Yeah.
Would you be able to explain to me what you mean by that, in the sense that you want what you have, but you want more of it? You want better service, you want less government, but I don't understand how you see how that's going to come our way for all of us in a better way without some kind of political system in place. Like, I just don't understand what you meant by that. Maybe you can explain it, elaborate on that.
Year over year, for decade over decade, government has become bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. They spend more, they have more departments, they get involved. They've been getting more and more involved in other aspects of our lives. They've been reducing our choices as they take over more areas of the economy. They, now you have the government, as I say, they're one of the largest employers across the board in communities nationally. They're not just involved. Like, I view government as something that is there for legal reasons, for reasons of sovereignty, to protect us, to provide public safety through policing and military as directed by the people through the system of government. So there are certain services that government needs to be and should be involved in. But I think that the way that they are currently involved in our economy is an example of overreach. They use these different their healthcare has become socialized to the level where now you really only have one place to go for it. That's one of the main examples that I've cited here. And so as a result, you really have, as they take your choice away, you become more dependent. And therefore, if you want to use the word, I don't like to use the term enslaved, but you do become far more dependent on government, to the point where you maybe become completely dependent on it. In Canada, you are almost completely dependent on government for a lot of major healthcare. You don't have another option. You have to go through the government system. I don't agree with that. I don't think that's right. They've taken you're not allowed to set up an alternative healthcare system because it's regulated. It's against the law. So there's an example. I don't see how anyone can deny that. And when I say I want better service, I do want better service on things like garbage pickup, but I don't think that I want the government involved in a lot of the social engineering that we see taking place. I don't think it's necessary for government to be involved in our lives in the bedroom or in other aspects of our communities.
Yeah, I get
and our
that.
Society,
but
right?
Rick, that clip you showed on that guy in Seattle smashing in that cop's door.
Yeah.
It looked like he had a huge tumor or something growing out of his stomach. He probably has mental illness as well.
No doubt.
I think a social, and that's not representative of Seattle, like as the majority.
Mm-hmm.
So I think a socialized socialism, whatever you want to term it as, healthcare system might prevent things like that. There's a very what is it, the 1% that are doing all the damage?
Yeah, and as I said, if you listen to carefully what I said, I have no problem with that. But what the government has done is they've said, no, there's only going to be socialized healthcare. They're not giving people any other option. They're taking the choice
If you have
away,
money, you have
taking your
options.
freedom away.
If you have money, you have options. If you don't, you're in the system.
No, not in
Simple as
Canada.
that.
Not if you're in Canada.
You can get on a plane and you can get on WestJet and you can fly anywhere you want.
Right. Well, that's not. But
Right?
that's not.
It
That's
doesn't have
not.
to be.
That's not an option for a lot of people because that's
That's
that
why I
makes
said
it
the social
so
program works
expensive.
for a lot of people. Okay, we agree to disagree on that one. That
No,
13
you know
billion
what?
bucks
No,
to
you know,
Volkswagen.
because you're saying, well, you can do that, but no, that's not realistic for Canadians. That's realistic for people who are who have international mobility. It was an option for me at one point when I went down to Florida for a hand operation that wasn't available to me, but that wasn't fair. That's not fair. No, the government says that it's illegal in Canada, within our country, to get like knee replacement surgery from anybody other than a Canadian licensed or provincially licensed surgeon. And you shouldn't have to leave the country to avail yourself of those kinds of services. No, in our country, people should have choice because that is freedom. When they're saying, no, you're not allowed, that's a restriction on freedom.
Well, not allowed. I don't know. You said not legal. It's illegal to go and get health care somewhere else. I don't know. Where's that written down?
It's illegal to get. You cannot set up a private clinic in Canada and start giving people knee surgeries without government approval, and the government's not going to approve it. Now, in places like Alberta, we saw some references over there during the debate that they wanted to bring in some more private healthcare options. And in Ontario, the premier is also talking about bringing in more private healthcare options. But there are a lot of restrictions on what provinces can do because of the Canada Health Act and the philosophy of universality, which imposes restrictions. It takes away people's freedoms under the guise or the idea or the philosophy, ideology of fairness, equity, and equality. But it's really equity is the key phrase. And it's not right because it takes away my freedom.
Rick, I'm trying to be polite, but I didn't read any of that on that Liberal platform you read out last week.
That's because they don't need to put it in the party platform. It's already law.
Well, then that's a dictatorship if that's the case.
That is the case. You can go look it up. Go read the Canada Health
Trust you on
Act.
that.
Go read the Canada Health Act, man. It's all in there. And that's why provinces have so much difficulty bringing in any kind of private level of healthcare. There's always a ton of pushback, and universality is always cited as one of the main reasons. And it's all in the Canada Health Act. And the transfer payments from the federal government to each level of every provincial government is predicated on adherence or compliance with the Canada Health Act. The government won't give the provinces the money unless they comply with these ideas and the laws as set out in the Canada Health Act. And universality is one of the main components of that. So it's a constant struggle.
So Rick, we can bring in firefighters to fight wildfires from the States or anywhere in the world to help us out. But we can't bring in doctors, or we can't go see one when our body's on fire. Like, it's kind of contradictory. It's kind of I don't get it.
Yeah, you're right.
I guess I have to read the hell.
That's
I mean, saving lives, right? That's what it's all boiled down to.
Yeah.
The other thing you mentioned, that $13 billion to Volkswagen and 30 million people or whatever we are, 13 billion. Divvy it up to all of us. I'd rather see it go to Volkswagen, and you know why? Because if we all walked around with $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 in our pocket, who wants to go to work? Now we're more of a strain on society.
Universal basic income. You just nailed it right there. That's a big problem.
Yeah, that is a problem.
And I only threw that out there as like a thing. I don't advocate for giving people a bunch of free money like that. But honestly, I'm having a real tough time with the 13 billion going to any company either. But at the same time, I don't know what choice the government is left with when you have other governments like the United States through the Inflation Reduction Act and other programs where they're subsidizing big companies like car companies to build plants. They're doing the same things there. So how do you compete with those other nations to attract those investments if you want public-private partnerships like they have? Well, you know, if they do it in the States, we have to do it here too, right?
Yeah, exactly. And public-private should be multinational. I don't know why you're against that. It would also create a little peace on the planet. We're not going to blow each other up when we're business partners. You know, there's another side to all this.
Because it crushes the free market. It crushes small business. It crushes medium-sized business. It crushes independent investment. It makes everything dependent on government. When everything becomes public-private partnerships, as we're seeing, then it's really all government and big oligarchs. It's like it creates exactly what, you know, the socialists and the communists and everybody, it does create income inequality. It creates a huge disparity. It guts the middle class. It does away with a lot of...
The middle class have to get educated then. They have to teach at school the stock market and how things work, how capitalism works.
There's no because it strips people of opportunity. It eliminates opportunity for investment.
It opens doors to opportunity, Rick.
No, it doesn't.
No, it doesn't. Yes, it does.
It puts all the onus for all the investment on us, the taxpayers, and all that money, every penny of that $13 billion is coming straight out of our pockets and straight into those big companies, those multinational corporations. Every penny of it.
Do you think any government's going to pay back trillions of dollars of debt? I don't think so.
Do you think those companies?
But I'm not condoning that.
Why should we give Volkswagen $13 billion? Just here you go, Volkswagen, $13 billion. Who's paying for that? You're paying for it. I'm paying for it. Anybody who's out there working for it. Every single mom who's working 3 jobs for minimum wage, but still paying taxes at the end of the day, that's going to Volkswagen. Volkswagen needs $13 billion. Or how about Loblaws when they got the big multi-million-dollar handout from the government to buy freezers during the pandemic? Does Loblaws need our tax dollars to subsidize their freezers?
Our schools need to teach people how to keep the automated system working. You know, there's screws and nuts and bolts in that automated system. Our kids need to learn how to keep that stuff working. Those are the new jobs on this planet.
No doubt about it, but it doesn't mean that we have to give the big corporations the money to invest in that. They can do it themselves. They've made billions and zillions of dollars over decades and decades, and they should be investing that private money back in, so that they can make more profits. But why should we subsidize them to that level so that they can reap more profits? They take the money and then they take the profits.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying it's not corrupt. I'm just saying if it was done properly, it would work. And I think we're kind of on the same page on that, but we don't see it working. That's why we're not.
Yeah, it's not working. It's just it's gone way too much. It's gone too far. Way too far.
Yeah.
Because, you know, here's my approach. I would approach it entirely differently. I would create tax incentives for companies instead of giving them money up front. It's a push or a pull, you see. You create an incentive for them to invest. And if they invest, they have to come in, they have to do the investment, they have to build the plant, they have to do the production, they have to hire the workers. And when they've done all of these things, then when they make a profit, they might get some sort of a tax break back so that their tax level is maybe a little bit lower, so that their profit levels end up being higher. But no, they're doing it the other way around. They're taking the money from us and they're just giving it to them and saying, hey, build this thing. We want battery plants. So here's $13 billion. Will you do it? Will you come and build them here? And then Volkswagen says, yeah, I guess so. We'll put in 6. You give us $13 billion and then we'll build it. That's
no, I agree with that, Rick. No, I agree with that, Rick. We're giving the baby the treat before, or not the baby, but we're giving a kid a treat before they did mow the lawn. Yeah, I get that. Yeah, that makes sense.
And it also means that when you give the money up front, there's no incentive there. There's actually less incentive to be efficient, to be cost effective. It creates waste and it creates corruption, because everything should be based on performance, merit. Are these companies actually producing? Are they investing in our communities? Are they investing in the industry? Are they actually profitable? Is what they're doing viable? If it isn't, then they go bust and they don't get any tax breaks. But if they produce something and they create something and they are successful and they are making a profit, then we say to them, instead of paying X percentage taxes, we're going to give you, because you agreed to come here, we're going to give you, less tax here, or maybe there won't be as big a bill for maybe your electricity or your property taxes, your business taxes, or whatever it is. But in the end, make sure that they actually produce something. There was a transport truck factory here, International Truck, that was a really old factory, and they were going to shut it down. And people were here, including the union, said, no, you can't shut down International Truck. It'll devastate the local economy. So the federal government came in, and it was kind of a bogus backdoor way of giving them a handout, but they came up with $20 million. And they gave International $20 million to keep the doors open there. And they did for about a year and a half or 2 years. And then after that, when the money was all gone, they just closed up shop and left anyway. It kept this place open for a couple more years. That's all that did, because it was just a straight up handout to another multinational corporation. And they just went back to Chicago and then moved their, to their head office there, counted their cash while they moved production to Mexico. And right now, today, that property, that factory is now leveled. It's a field, and there's some new thing that they're trying to build over there. But those days are long gone now. And where's the 20 million?
Yeah, no, you're explaining yourself better than you did on your quote unquote rant there a little bit. But now you're explaining things where I'm agreeing with it.
Well, that's
maybe you just need to maybe you need to be quizzed a bit. But here's another one you hate: multinational corporations. You don't seem to like that.
I don't hate multinational corporations. I don't hate them. And I don't hate the stock market.
No,
I'm not anti-capitalist either. I'm not. Don't get me wrong.
Okay.
I'm looking for
here's my
balance.
question to you.
Sure.
If we have multinational corporations, just for a hypothetical example here, say we have a business and we're partners with another company in China. Are we going to blow each other up when we're both prospering? I don't think so. I think everything's good.
I agree with you there. We should be having more international cooperation, more trade, focus more on, mutual prosperity. I'm all for that. I'm all for more trade with China or any country for that matter. I don't really care who it is. Let's engage in more commerce, because you're right. Then we won't blow each other up. If we're so busy making life better and becoming more prosperous across the board, then we're just in much better shape overall. So I'm not against that. What I'm against is governments just handing out free money to these big companies at our expense.
Yeah, no, I'm against that.
That's it.
Yeah, no, that's true. I don't know what you were getting at with legalizing pot there with Trudeau.
Nothing.
Enslaving people or whatever he is into socialism. Like what?
I was just saying that was one of the tools he used to get people to vote for him. That was my point.
I think most people vote for their MP, really, or actually, no. I guess they vote for the leader of the country, but I voted for my MP.
Yeah, I mean, period. Or they vote for the policy, right? Because they want something.
Most people don't know policies. Do you think anybody read anything about the Liberal platform unless you put it up there? I wouldn't have read it.
No, people wouldn't read that. But that marijuana issue was very important to a lot of people, and so there's no question that was a driving issue in that election, and Trudeau definitely benefited from that. The Liberals across the board, whether it was the members of Parliament who were elected Liberal, or Trudeau himself, who ultimately benefits because his government is elected and he becomes prime minister.
Well, at least he actually legalized it. He didn't just make a promise and not do it. Kudos on that one for him, but otherwise, get off him now. But everybody wants free stuff, like you said, but especially healthcare, and be owned, as you put it, by the government.
Kind
But
of.
what's better? What's better though? Be owned and get free healthcare, as whatever you think of the free healthcare is, but or be owned or not get free healthcare and be owned. I mean, what's your choice there?
I've always said that I think we need sort of a hybrid system. I think that you need some degree of choice available in the system.
What, Sweden's system or something? Or that's a socialist. Sweden, the Swedish system, or wherever it is in Scandinavia.
I think we need.
It's a hybrid you want to bring into this.
I just think that we need some level of privatization so that there's some level of competition for even the government system, which will make it more efficient. And it'll also create more taxation, so that money can then be funneled back into the public portion of the healthcare system to make sure that those who can't afford to pay still get the service that they need. I think there should be a minimum level of service available to everyone. So explain
to the Americans, I'm Canadian, but explain to the American audience how this free system works when they can buy an aspirin up here for 20 cents and it costs them $1. Where's the free system on the healthcare there?
Well, aspirin's not a good example because that's
you're saying we don't have it.
There's
that's what I'm talking about.
You need to understand too that not all prescription medication up here is free. That's a misconception. And there's a lot of healthcare up here that people still end up paying for. Yeah, you can go to your family doctor and you get your healthcare there, but there's still a lot of things even within our government-run healthcare system that you end up having to pay for. So if you get sick, you still end up with a pretty hefty financial burden in our society, depending on your particular situation. Do you have an employer with a healthcare plan in Canada? If you don't, you still could be saddled with huge prescription bills. Or if you just, for instance, say you had a colostomy and you had to have all the supplies for to service your colostomy, though that gets to be very expensive over time. That's a huge financial burden, even that for a lot of people. But a lot of that stuff is not covered by the healthcare system. All kinds of things like that.
Well, Rick, I'll tell you something that'll blow your mind about the healthcare system, the Canadian healthcare system. Where I live, which is very rural, it's way, way, way out in the woods. If somebody gets sick, a life-threatening sickness of whatever, they medevac you to the nearest center. I don't want to say where I am, but it's 10 or 12,000 bucks for that plane, and it will come and take you to that center.
Yeah.
No matter every Tom, Dick, or Harry, they don't care if you're rich or poor or in between.
Yeah.
They will medevac you on a Twin Otter plane. Will be here in a couple hours and take you to the center, to the hospital.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's draining the system. I'm sure it's not easy for it, but it seems like the further out in the woods you get, the more preferential treatment you get. I'm not kidding.
Because that's all kind of comes under that idea of universality, where they're trying to provide, an equitable level of healthcare across the board for all Canadians, even regardless of where you live geographically. That's why they'll give financial incentives to doctors to move to more remote communities. There are all these programs in place. And it's a response to Canada being such a vast country geographically, these challenges that are in place. But while they're trying to do that on that end, if you're in a major urban center, there are many communities where if you call an ambulance, you can't get right now prompt service. And in fact, here's a little example just to show you the craziness of the system. My son, this is a few years ago, he cut his hand on like a food slicer thing, and I wasn't home. This is when he was younger. And he phoned me and he was like in a panic and he didn't know what to do. I said, well, call an ambulance. He was home alone, right? So he called 911. The ambulance showed up, took a little while, fine. He got the ride to the hospital, to emergency, and he finally got the help that he needed. He really hurt himself bad. He was just bleeding like crazy, a lot of pain. But then I got a bill in the mail for the ambulance. So yeah, they'll medevac somebody at $12,000 from some remote community, but for a 5-minute ride to the hospital because my son slices his hand open, I have to pay for the ambulance. So
I don't understand why you have to pay for that. Yeah, that is, and I don't understand that. Why the two different rules on that? We get a medevac in a plane. And you have to pay for an ambulance on the road that costs next to nothing.
Yeah, and it's like
literally
a 5-minute
I don't understand.
drive.
That it's an unfair system. I'm just finding that out now. I didn't know that. I thought you guys would get everything just like we did.
Nope.
Yeah, that's strange. The other thing about private enterprise, entrepreneurs, and this and that, concerts. I saw Nazareth in about, I think it was the late 90s, something like that. And it was in an arena, a hockey arena. It was just jam-packed. There was no government funding for the band.
Yeah.
Funny story about all that, but I'll leave that out. Anyway, the band made money, and so did the community that owns the arena. So your economy of scale there, when you said, well, now it has to be government funded for even a concert to take place, blah, blah, blah. Not necessarily. The further out in the woods you get, trust me, things still work a little bit, but we're a little distant.
I'm just looking at there's like a concert in the park they put on in London, Ontario, and they say they have to go after the government money. There's a country music festival that not that many years ago was pretty much all just private money, and now it's like, oh, we can't survive unless we get the government handout. So they're there with their handout every year looking for the money.
You live in a big populated area, and that's when the dollar gets stretched to the limit. And I guess they kind of sprinkle a little more dough on the woods out here.
And here's the thing: it's like I think it was last year, maybe the year before. I can't remember what year, but because of the pandemic, it's all blurring together. But they brought Loverboy here to my town, and they had a free concert in the park. Free. The municipality paid for it, tax dollars. They brought Loverboy, free concert. Okay, everybody's like, yay, free concert. And so a lot of people went down. I went down. I checked it out. My wife wanted to go. All right, I'll go to the Loverboy concert. So down we go. But that was all government money. So if I was a concert promoter, what concert would I bring to that park? And could I charge a fee? Maybe, but a lot of people wouldn't go because then they begin to, it's like the expectation is, well, why is yours like $20 and last week it was free? It's you can't compete, is what I'm saying, right? Or if I wanted to do something that same weekend in one city over, where would people go? They'd go to the free one, depending on the band, I guess.
I'd pay $50 to go see Loverboy, man. I would support them all the way. That's a great band.
Yeah. There was a good concert.
Unsung heroes of Canada, those guys, man. They just didn't make it in the States. That's their only problem they had.
So here's the philosophical question or ideological question. Is that progressive? They're using tax dollars to put on a concert in the park, and it's free. So they're drawing from the pool of revenue that's collected from taxpayers generally. And so maybe you don't want to go to that concert. Maybe you have no interest in that. But that's the one that the bureaucrats chose. That the municipal
Trudeau or the bureaucrats, they're choosing they're saying they're supporting the arts. But no, I agree with you, Rick, on that. I don't.
And you want to talk about the arts? Okay, so my brother's an artist. And I'm not going to get too much into my brother because he might not want me talking about him specifically. But, he said to me years ago that he was going to look into maybe getting a grant for some of the painting and stuff that he did. But then in my mind, it's like, that's a trap too. Because who gets government grants to produce art? is artists that produce art with a political tone to it. They give the grants to the artists that produce things that support their political ideology.
Like a portrait of their leader.
Well, maybe, but no, it's more like if you wanted to, like, even for me as a producer of programming for television, if I wanted to get a government grant to produce a film,
yeah,
you can get them, but when you do, you have to produce a film that deals with subject matter that falls into their social engineering goals. That's what gets the money.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, there's always a catch to it for sure.
Mm-hmm.
It's the political system we live in.
So
it's
then
all
it's no
about,
longer really art, right? You're no longer free to create as an artist. Now you're being commissioned basically by the government to produce a propaganda piece. That's not, in my view, art.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, well, you know more about that than I do, but if that's how it is, holy man, I don't like the sounds of that.
That's
not one bit. Yeah, holy sheesh. National sovereignty.
Mm-hmm.
You went on a bit about national sovereignty. I don't know if there is such a thing. If you have multinationalism, multinational corporations, without investment into our country of our little 40 million or whatever we are, what is the population of us? It was like 15 million back in 1967. But anyway, if there's say 40 million of us, I think we'd be the betterment for ourselves and all other countries that we're tied to is multinationalism. I really, I know people think, oh no, we're going to have people working for nothing in Pakistan and India, sweatshops and child labor and this, that, whatever. We can't control that. Look, I just don't want us all dropping bombs on each other because really we're competing economically, and that's what this world is about. They came to their senses about it. We have some guys that stand out in a spotlight saying you can't do this, you can't do that, like you stop the war in Ukraine. We have no control over that. They're way bigger boys on the block than us. And yet we have people that talk that way, which is really fucking dumb, in my opinion. But anyway, I think peace, prosperity, happiness, everything else goes with being together, holding hands. Let's go to work together and make everybody, food on the table and all that, all over the world, not just here where we have our little hang now and we're complaining about it. I'm not belittling. I'm not trying to emphasize anything you did about the healthcare system, Rick. I'm just saying that we're very, very fortunate to be right where we are, sitting right now. Mm-hmm. We're not looking for, a banana tree to have something to eat, whatever we're doing. Like, we're very well off, and I appreciate that.
Oh, I'm not disagreeing with that. I've just seen the system slowly over time change because of more and more government encroachment, the growth of government. And I think that a lot of the problems that we have right now and the problems that we see on the horizon are simply the result of growing government encroachment into our lives.
Yeah. Oh, you're right on that. You're right on that. Especially we see it in the States side. That is such a war going on down there in the political arena. It's unreal. The garbage they're throwing at each other. Unreal. But it's here too. It's just a little more low key, I guess. It'll come out the same way eventually in one of our elections and every day on our news. But what they're doing is definitely happening here. It's just, it's not as obvious, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's across the board. I think it's the politics is a little different up here, but I don't think it's that much different here than it is in the States in many respects. It seems different because the United States is so much bigger. You have much bigger cities. They have some different issues and problems and challenges. And we saw that guy with the baseball bat, right? I mean, there's that kind of thing going on up here too. People with mental health issues living on the street, and, you know, cops being forced now to deal with, like here in Canada, for instance, we talk about socialized healthcare, and yet they shut down basically the institutions where they used to provide support service and housing really for the mentally ill. They shut them down because they said that they weren't humane. They called them, you know, psychiatric institutes, basically, right? And they said, "Oh no, there were some abuses and things that happened in those places." But what did they do with those people? A lot of them are just out on the street, and so now the cops have to deal with that. And that's not right either.
Well, yeah, exactly. You're right about that, 100%. And you know, mental illness used to be something that everybody hid in the closet and here and there, but no, there's plenty of people that have mental illness, and we should be trying to look after them. I don't believe in giving money away to the more bombs to support any country fighting any war.
Right.
It's not our war. You know, if I had to babysit every grandchild, every son, every daughter I had, and follow them like their shadow 24/7, I wouldn't have a life. We have to start looking after our own people in our own yard, and not be this great grand wizard that goes flying off to these G7 meetings saying, I'll save you. Like, save the people that are here. And I always mention this, or I try to anyway, especially the First Nations people that I think have been just swept under the carpet for years. I don't know, you have opinions on this, but I still think we owe them a lot of debt. We're so indebted to them, but anyway, that's another story. Now, my last question is, how do I get Rumble? I'm on Bell, and I never find Rumble.
When you say you're on Bell, Bell Internet, you mean?
Yeah, I'm on Bell. My TV, my satellite TV is Bell, but I can get YouTube, and I can get Netflix, and I get everything, but I can't find Rumble on there.
Okay, so I don't know exactly what kind of a setup you have there.
Maybe I have to order it or something.
Well, it's just on the internet, right? So do you have a browser like Chrome on your device, or something similar to?
Well, if I go, oh geez, are we disconnected now?
No.
Oh geez. Oh, okay. I'm scrolling around here on my thing.
Mm-hmm. You just need a browser to go on the internet. On your device. It sounds like you're clicking on like an icon for an app for YouTube or an app for Netflix. But what you need to click on is like Chrome, or what are the other popular browsers? I use Chrome all the time.
But I'm not on a laptop, Rick. I'm on the TV.
Yeah.
I see Roku, Sky News. Yeah.
You need to install a browser so you can go online. Rumble probably has an app as well that if you installed it on your smart TV is what you're looking at, and that's why you're having some trouble.
I get it. Okay. Yeah. I was wondering about that. I'm not too tech savvy here, but yeah, that made sense to me. I'll get my boy when he gets out of the mine. He works at De Beers. So.
Yep.
Yeah, anyway, Rick, I really appreciate the conversation. I always enjoy talking to you.
Yeah.
Always, yeah. And I look forward to the rest of your program.
Thank you, sir. I'm glad we could have the conversation, and I'm glad that we reached some middle ground there, too. That was very good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Right on, Rick.
Okay, my man.
Yeah, good night.
Take care. Here's Sharon.
Oh, hi, Rick.
Hey.
I appreciate you taking the time to talk earlier to this gentleman, because sometimes maybe, some of the examples you gave seem to maybe help clear up any misunderstanding or confusion, or just, like just a general talking point. And when you do break it down specifically when you're asked the question, because I can't see you, sometimes things come up when you're asked something, and then, it becomes a more like a specific point. So I appreciate that.
Sure.
I think what I like the idea of what Trump used to talk about, and I agreed with his viewpoint as far as any international agreements would work better, like he was saying, one-on-one. So if America wants to negotiate a particular agreement with South Korea or with, another country, whatever country he's working with, as opposed to say how did they used to say it, a multinational agreement where
multilateral.
I like some, where okay, if I make an agreement with you and vice versa, where both countries would benefit. It would be almost more of a win-win where I like that approach.
Me too.
I thought it made a lot of sense. I don't know.
I agree with that.
Go ahead, sir. Yeah.
I think that's the right way to go.
He was doing that, wasn't he, when he was president?
He was
knocking out different agreements left and right.
Yep. Certainly was.
And when you're referring to our healthcare system, I agree as well. There would be, it would be nice to have a private system here as well, so that there is choice. And I think, as far as I don't remember, all I remember growing up as a kid was a public school system. Was there? When did government step in to provide a public education system in Canada? Like before that, was there not just private? Yeah, I'm trying to think. At one point, the education system was not taken over by government, correct?
Yeah, it's that's a good question. I think because it would vary from province to province, even maybe city to city.
Yeah.
Let me just Google it. Introduce.
Oh yeah, right.
And education, 1871, free and compulsory public schooling was first instituted in Ontario in 1871. And most Canadian provinces soon followed its lead. Free state-run schools offered answers to major social and economic problems of the time. So 1871 seems to be a milestone date for that. Prince Edward Island, province-wide common schooling system in 1852.
So prior to that, and it seems to be returning now, but prior to that, was it private schools, and or was it also the churches getting involved as far as education?
I would think so. I don't quote me. I'm not an expert on the history on that. So I do know that I used to watch Little House on the Prairie.
Right.
Right. And they had
I did too.
one room schoolhouse, and it was basically community run. The town would hire the teacher. And I'll tell you this, my dad went to school in a one-room schoolhouse.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he all the way up through grade 8, and not far from here in the town of Buxton, the community of Buxton, they have a one-room schoolhouse there. It's a lot of Black history there, Black community, great community. And out of that one-room schoolhouse there, which is now sort of a tourist attraction, it's a historical place. So they produced like doctors and some great people, great community leaders. And that wasn't, it seems like a long time ago, but really it wasn't that long ago. And my dad's
no
example of that.
Well, when I see what's happening or what's being taught now in the government schools, and I know there's private schools too, and I think unfortunately not everyone can go to private school, and I guess it's good for people wherever they live, whatever state or province, to pay attention, I guess, to what's being taught now, because I know there's a lot of messaging, whether it's through different forms of media or Hollywood or the type of messaging that is being pushed, and that's not related to what I certainly grew up with, and I'm sure yourself. is just, it's unbelievable what is being broached as acceptable or quote unquote normal, or which it isn't.
Yeah.
I don't think. And I get a little bit. I sometimes, well, I shouldn't speculate, but I kind of wonder in the future what kind of what a lot of young people unfortunately have all these extra issues that maybe really aren't issues and shouldn't be something that should be stressing them out. I guess there's a lot of different factors, hey Rick, in what young people or younger people are exposed to, and maybe they just think, oh well, it's okay to just go along to get along, but sometimes that's not always the best thing to do or accept.
Yeah.
But anyways, I'm kind of talking off the top of my head.
Well, with these public school systems, every government, like, it doesn't matter what their political ideology is, doesn't matter if it's Hitler or Trudeau or Biden, or it doesn't matter. They all want the kids, and they want some level of influence or control over the school system, because they want to mold those little minds to believe what they want them to believe, including mine. That's why even I'm constantly questioning the way I look at things. Am I looking at things the way I look at them because I was taught or indoctrinated through the system to look at it that way? Well, it starts when you're a kid, right?
Yeah, true. That's a good point. I've heard that before. Like, I just not blindly, I just, took part in whatever was being taught, quote unquote taught. I just thought, well, this is our version of history, and just accept that. It's interesting as we get older, and I'm glad to hear you kind of point this out to us. It's good to always question and research and not take everything blind. Like, just
yes.
don't blindly just say that.
You know how I kind of keep myself sane? I think I'm sane. I'm not sure. But the way I kind of approach a lot of things, especially whether it's fixing a car or politics, I look at the structure, the way something works. I don't get totally caught up in the history, because what's the most important thing is where we're going and whether it's going to work.
Yeah.
But if you get caught up in the history, you can get down rabbit holes, and history gets rewritten over time. How accurate is it? It depends on the interpretation. So it's important to know.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it's like, does this economic system work, and what will be the impact from that? I look at the mechanisms in play, right? It's like you can get hung up on the history of a car and still not know how to fix it. You need to know how an engine works, not just know the cubic displacement, or that, Henry Ford was the guy responsible for it, right? It's a Ford. Yeah, it's a Ford. I know that, right? It made in, it's a Model T, but do you know how to fix it? Well, I don't got a clue. Right?
Yeah. You're like it working in the here and now.
Yeah,
working
because
in the here and
an
now.
engine is an engine is an engine. It's like, even I look at a car. A lot of people, it's like, well, what kind of, does it come with Bluetooth? Like, it's like, do you care about the motor? Right? It's like, I had to fix my car today. I had to fix the transmission on my car. Well, okay, I can look up what side, what part do I need? And then but I have to know how to put it back together to make the mechanics of it all work. And at the end of the day, like, it doesn't matter if it's got a computer in it or whatever, whether it's got a carburetor. At the end of the day, it's got pistons that go up and down inside the engine block, and it works in a particular way. And so I know how the systems work. It's just like the battery went dead in my car, but it wasn't completely dead this past week. And I couldn't understand why my car would crank, but it wouldn't start. And it took me an hour to kind of figure it out. And it was just because the battery was weak. There wasn't enough juice to run the computer to make the fuel injection system work. So it was like very confusing because the battery wasn't quite toast. It would start sometimes, but other times. But you understand how the system works, you can figure it out. I don't need to know the history of Volkswagen.
I think what your strength for me is, I mean, maybe other people, can see or can spot this, where we all have our different skills and strengths, and I think for me, sometimes when you start to talk about current issues or what's happening in the world, that when you start to talk about what the long-term impact may be, or consequence, or positive thing, that's helpful for me to listen to. So because sometimes I'm not thinking like that. I'm not thinking, like, I don't know what a good example would be. Well, maybe just a good example with the you were talking about before, I think it was, the electric car and versus the gas vehicle, or when it comes to solar power, which in these big windmills, or these, that they're placing all over the country, and the long-term impact or problem that would create. So that's good for me to listen to, because I don't always think that way, or I'm not really paying too much attention. I just say, oh, well, that's, I don't see the common sense, especially with electric vehicles, because the amount of possible contamination and pollution from the battery and the resources needed to build it doesn't make economic sense, does it?
I don't think so. Not right now.
No.
Not to me. I'm really, really, really worried about it. I really am. Because
this is a big interest, this is a big impact on an economy, isn't it? Vehicle production and vehicle
for
sales,
Canada, especially. Do you know that if you're a political scientist or an economist, one of the ways they measure whether you are actually like a first world nation and like a viable first world nation economy is whether you have the ability as a nation state to put together a car, to produce a car.
Oh, okay.
They use that as a measuring stick, as a metric. It's like if you can do that in your country, then you've basically arrived in the modern world. If you can't do that, then you're kind of a second world or even a third world country. That's how they look at it, and it's a very good measuring stick, because you have to have the supply chains, you have to have the economy to support it, you have to have the technology, you have to have all these things in place. And Elon Musk, just at that shareholders meeting in this past week, he said, putting to get like manufacturing, producing a car at scale is the most difficult thing you can probably do. That's the way he talks about it. I've heard him say it many times over, and I totally get it. I understand. It's very difficult. Making every seam on a car fit just right. All the panels have to go together. It can't have rattles or squeaks. It's got to be safe. You have to be able to crash it at certain speeds so that the people inside don't die. It has to be reliable.
Oh yeah.
All the technology, all these things, and it has to be done. You have to put together on an assembly line, hundreds of them a day, if not thousands, right? At scale, efficiently, so that you can then deliver them to market, painted without any dust or flaws in the paint at all, so that it's gleaming with not a single scratch. And it has to be delivered for like, $25,000. That's not easy.
Yeah.
So this government, what our government is doing right now, they are rolling the dice with our future on this entire industry. Billions and trillions of dollars being dumped into it. And if they get it wrong, we are screwed. Because we are all in. Because not only are they setting up the electric car industry, while they're doing it, they are dismantling the very industry that has been the engine that has driven our economy since the turn of the 20th century. Internal combustion engines, gone.
Crazy.
And if they get this wrong, we are screwed. So, cross your fingers.
Note,
I hope they get it right.
Yeah, I'm hoping this. I hope. Yeah, that's what. Yeah.
It's true.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. And
because again, they're taking away our freedom, right? They're saying like, sorry, you're not allowed to have gas powered cars anymore. It's illegal. We're going to outlaw it by X year, like 2025 or 2030. And it's like war on gasoline. And it's like, oh my God. And if they get it wrong, well, guess we're all bankrupt. And like, and while they're doing all of this, as I pointed out last week, what are they importing just in the last week into Canada and the United States? VinFast. Electric cars made in Vietnam. The first 784 arrived here, and they're going into our market. I said that is an example of the modern day Volkswagen Beetle. Mark my words. And then they expect us, we're going to compete just because we've got a bunch of government money that's going into these factories and plants, and everybody's still working on the same, union contracts for the same high wages and blah, 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 blah. Okay, well, it's all fine right now while the money is fresh off the credit card. But later on, when that money starts to run out and these companies need to and are expected to operate at scale, viably, efficiently, turning a profit so that they can sustain the economy and keep on paying the employees, well, they're going to be under intense pressure because as the technology comes in and the prices come down, and then you've got foreign competition from China and Vietnam and who knows what other countries, as this industry is global. And what was the other mistake? Elon Musk made a lot of this technology open source, shared it with the world. We gave Tesla and Elon Musk billions of dollars in hundreds of millions of billion. I'd have to look up the number again to develop the electric car technology, which he then made open source, and he just gave it away to the world. So now all these other countries have the same technology. The Chinese are producing these products we subsidized it with our tax dollars, and then we've given it to competing nations to go head to head with us. Well, maybe that seems pretty philanthropic and kumbaya, but I'll tell you this, it's not going to help us. 10 years from now, when VinFast is no longer importing 784 vehicles, but maybe 78,000, because the Vietnamese have the same technology that was developed and it wasn't patented. And we subsidize the development of it. People aren't even thinking about that. Got to have to pay the bill someday.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'll just keep tuning in and listen to.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to depress you. It's
no.
true,
I just it's just the impact of the impact of some of these decisions by a few really impact millions of people. So yeah, it's
and those are the things we really need to be focused on. And what are they telling us? Climate change, gender ideology, like blah blah blah. Like for crying out loud. Can you please get serious for a moment, right?
Yeah. It's a good reality check for me. So, well, thanks, Rick. I'll let you go, and you have a good long weekend too.
Yeah, you too. I it's really nice outside.
Say hi to the fisherman.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is it Fred?
Fred.
Do I have the right name, Fred?
Fred.
Yeah.
Fred.
Say hi to Fred for me.
Okay, I'll do that. I'll come back with on the next show. We'll have some more upbeat subject matter. I'll cheer you up next time.
Oh no, you didn't bring me down. I think I was just I appreciate your passion and your interest, because it's sounds like you care too, and sometimes it's good to have a bit of a reality shake up, because it's good to hear that sometimes, because give my head a shake. It's not about these climate change, like you said, or these gender identity or trans or whatever. I mean, that's an issue, but it's not like it's not an issue where it threatens my livelihood.
That's right. That's all a bunch
yeah.
of political hot air. That's a lot of that stuff. We need to focus on the real things if we're going to solve our problems and create
Well, you have a
prosperity
good
for
night,
our
Rick.
kids.
Thank you so much.
Too. Thank you so much for the call.
Yes, that's right. Thanks.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
take care. Okay, folks. There we go. That gets us to 9:23 on this 20th day of May, 2023. Thank you, everybody, for joining us here on the program. You can support the show by donating at freedomreporters.com or maverickdonations.com. There's freedomreporters.com, the banner's up, or Maverick Donations is the other URL you can go to. I don't think there's going to be a show tomorrow night because I think I'm going to go visit my mom. I'm going to take a day off and spend some time with her. And my son, too. I think we're both going to go. So that'll be a great day. But I will be back the next day, I believe, which will take us to Monday. So we're going to take a Sunday off. How about that? And I appreciate the time that you spent here so much. It is a privilege, as always. It means a lot. It really does. I'm amazed and humbled every night to see so many people here with us. Truly appreciate it. However, I will be back Monday, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, here on the Maverick News Channel, where we have the antivirus programs for your mind. On the flip side.
This has been a Maverick Multimedia production.